What if I were to suggest that you play a key role in the awakening world? And that you are watching this because you have heard the call. We can start right now by opening our hearts and minds. Welcome to the awakening world.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Awakening World. So what are your thoughts about UFOs, UAPs, and now we even have a new one, USOs, unidentified submergible objects? What do you think about those things? Well, most of you are probably aware that government disclosure is imminent, or so we are being told. And that there's also an incredible wave of UFO, UAP, drone sightings all around the world, not just in New Jersey. And so I'm really grateful that a number of leaders in the field have come together tonight to talk about it. And so I want to introduce, it's such a big show that we have not one, but two co-hosts. And so I want to bring on board my good buddy, Alan Steinfeld, friend of mine since 1989, and a new friend who is extraordinary, Dr. Tara. And thank you, Alan, Dr. Tara, for inviting some of your friends and colleagues tonight. And what would you like to open your thoughts with?
Well, this is about the fifth or sixth Making Contact show we've done, Scott, and each time we do it, there's more information entering the field. We are in exciting times. The UFO genre has never been more public, more seen, more talked about. We are at a phase shift, and this drone thing, which we'll highlight today in the discussions, is the latest phase and getting us closer to what I think is a sort of world contact situation. What do you think, Tara?
I'd have to agree, Alan. Thank you so much for having me here, Scott. It's always a pleasure to be here. And this is such an important and broad and big topic. And I'm really excited to hear from all the guests tonight. So thank you.
I'm glad Dr. Tara is with us too. She runs the Consciousness Club. And you know, there's the external part of what's going on with all of this. But most important is, how is it impacting our consciousness? Are we raising our consciousness? Are we raising our vibration? Dr. Tara, really, you such a beautiful embodiment of that. So I'm glad you're with us.
Right.
I
know,
I
was just going to say, it's a great topic to talk about because it's so current, but there's so much other things going on in the world, and I know we'll talk about that a little bit. So
we will. I want to briefly let the audience know who our guests are tonight. And so very quickly, we've got SteveBassett is back. And he, honestly, Steve, when I hear you speak, you make the most sense of almost any of the main speakers out there. So I'm really grateful that you're with us. We have a new friend with us, Carolyn Brouillard. And welcome, Carolyn. I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say. And another new friend, Eduardo Mace, is with us tonight. So Eduardo, thank you for joining us. And here's a very beloved friend, John Martin. Of course, when we're talking about this topic, we got to have John with us. I see people like Eleanor Joy getting excited. Reverend Jeffrey is with us, and he and his colleague, Dr. Kat, are going to remind us about the wonderful work of the International Space Federation and how we can participate with that. And another new friend who just popped on is Daniel Branco. Welcome, Daniel. I'm glad that you're with us and looking forward to hearing what you have to say tonight. And as always with our shows, we have lots of music. And tonight, Fanny and Vigari are going to be back with us. There they are. Love you guys so much, and how perfect that you're with us this evening. And then finally, of course, beloved brother Bashar, who's going to provide us with a pair of songs. Just before we begin, I'm sure we're all aware that there's a Holocaust happening in Southern California right now. I lived in Topanga for 6 years. My home was the command post when there'd be big wildfires in Topanga. And so I know what it's like. And I'm sure many of you also have had that experience of when a wildfire or a hurricane or something like that's coming through, and you just don't know if you're going to make it or if your home's going to make it. And I'm sure all of us have friends in Southern California. So I'm going to go to gallery view, and we're going to start with a 90-second silent prayer sending maximum grace to Southern California, to the people there, to the land, to the animals. Maximum grace to Southern California. Thank you, everyone. Here's Bashar.
When you feel like giving up, when you feel like letting go, living in this ever-changing world, when it seems that all is lost and you don't know where to turn, the future seems so very far away. So just know there really is a plan. The sun will always shine, and with your hand in mine, all heaviness fades away. The love in our hearts will melt the darkest day. The love in our hearts will melt the darkest day. So when it seems that you're alone and the fears knock at your door, remember I am just a breath away. You are my brightest star. You've just forgotten who you are. Remember there is nothing in the way. So just know there really is a plan. The sun will always shine, and with your hand in mine, all heaviness fades away. The love in our hearts will melt the darkest day. Da-da-da-dum-dum-dum. Da-da-da-dum-dum-dum. The love in our hearts will melt the darkest day. So when you feel like giving up, when you feel like letting go, remember I am just a breath away. And just know there really is a plan. The sun will always shine, and with your hand in mine, all heaviness fades away. The love in our hearts will melt the darkest day. The love in our hearts will melt the darkest day. The love in our hearts will melt the darkest day.
Beauty gallery view. Let's all send love and twinkles. We twinkle Bashar and our guests when we appreciate their offerings. Thank you, beloved brother, and he will be back a little bit later on in the show. It was beautiful. And thank you for putting together that video. There's a fun video, Bashar. All right, I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Alan, who's got something fun to share, which kind of sets the tone for us tonight. Take it away, Alan.
Well, thank you, Scott. Yes, if people aren't familiar with what's been going on since November, basically, there's been, I call it invasions. People call it a swarm. It's a presence of drones. It started over New Jersey. I'm going to do a little screen share here. Does that come up on your screen, Scott?
Yes. Although, yes, it does.
It's not. Is that better? Is that the whole screen?
That's better. Yeah, that's better.
All right. This is where drones have seen all the red spots over the country itself. And then this is also started here in New Jersey. This is a November map. There's been at least 5,000 of these. Some look like planes, some look like just triangular lights, some look like plasma. So this is a little clip from a couple of different television stations and videos from Instagram.
Mysterious drones have been popping up in the night sky over New Jersey.
This is a video of the Morris County drones with characteristic triangle lights.
Residents sharing eerie videos like these on social media. Mike Walsh says he's been seeing them since mid-November.
They kind of sound like a helicopter, depending on how big they are, is how loud they are. There's red and green lights on either side of them.
He reported them to local police, but has not received any explanation. Other residents say the drones seem to fly in coordinated groups, appearing every night except Thanksgiving, and disappearing as soon as the sun comes up.
Just looked out the window at 6 o'clock, and there were 7 or 8 hovering right near my home. It's a complete violation of privacy and unnerving. I couldn't sleep last night.
Authorities saying there's no known threat to public safety, but residents have stayed on alert.
Look at that. Look at that. He is spraying the sky again. Bro, this is fucking crazy, man. Look at this guy. They're spraying the skies.
Residents are frustrated at the lack of information from authorities.
We want to know what's happening, and we want it to stop.
Yeah. So just a little more here. I got some. This is
these quite extraordinary.
This is Ross Coulter. He's a journalist from Australia, but he's been covering the UFO scene, giving this voiceover.
So-called drone sightings all across New Jersey. In fact, it's not just across New Jersey, it's across the entire continental United States, across the United Kingdom at certain military bases, and indeed, if what I'm hearing from multiple people from all over the world is right, Russia, China, New Zealand, Australia. This is a worldwide phenomenon.
Those are plasma ships. Those are not actually mechanical. Whatever these things are, you can see the scope of this phenomena. So it is showing up in all sorts of shapes, sizes. So there's a lot going on here, and the next guest is going to talk about the scope of this this phenomena that we have not seen before on a planetary scale. Here's some other drone shots. These drop down. Oh, this is, I think, Vietnam, maybe. And these are dropping into the ocean and just dropping right below the horizon. And nobody knows what's going on. That's the big surprise here. We'll get to the political part in a little bit, but just how is that, Scott? Does that give a kind of good overview?
Oh, yeah. Good job pulling those together. And let's hear what Steve has to say about it all.
Let me just introduce Steve as person he's a Washington lobbyist for UFO Truth. He's been talking about the truth embargo, I'd say, for the last 30 years, especially on this topic, going back to Roswell 1947 and how it's progressed. And Steve, we are at a new juncture in the UFO UAP history. So tell us what you make of the whole thing.
Let me try to put this into a context that's kind of appropriate for the program and your audience. So I'm going to start at year 1900. Starting in 1900, this is the turn of the 20th century, beginning of the 20th century. We went through an intellectual worldview change, extraordinary, almost nothing quite like it in history. And a very short amount of time, we saw the emergence of relativity theory, special relativity theory, quantum theory, atomic physics theory, and general astrophysics. And this intellectual shift just continued right on through the first 40 years of that century. And I say intellectual. In other words, the intellectual perception of the world and how it works and what it does in a way that could be proven and useful. Okay, so that was pretty good. But then, starting at the beginning of World War II, we'll call it 1940, another massive change occurred. Not so much an intellectual revolution or paradigm shift, but a technological paradigm shift. A lot of it was driven by World War II, which is the most technological war in all of history. Massive billions and trillions of dollars, current dollars were spent developing every manner of technology in order to win the war. But as we know, ETs were around. The government probably knew about this no later than the Foo Fighters, but may have had a vehicle prior to that, but it was pretty tightly held. But they certainly had a vehicle and a live ET as of Roswell, which is now 1945. What goes forward after that is the greatest technological revolution in history, almost equaling everything that has come before. And we're talking 84 years from 1940. All right, pretty big deal. And all technological change has worldview impact. When the car turned up and people started having cars, it changed the way they thought. It changed the way they engaged the world. All right. Airplanes. Oh, my Lord. When everybody could fly and see the world from above, interact more. And then all kinds of medical technology changed the way we think. And let's don't even get into the internet and smartphones and so forth, which were utterly changing the worldview, if not rewiring the brains of our kids. So this last 84 years has been something else. But there's an aspect of it which is appropriate to this show. Because as soon as the military had in its possession a live extraterrestrial, and in the ensuing years, it's pretty clear they had a number of crashes and a number of extraterrestrials, as well as probably engaging contactees of a sort, whether they were in the government itself or whether they approached or learned about contactees. They learned very early on, mid-20th century, that all extraterrestrials were telepathic, which is an absolute massively significant thing, which absolutely scared them to death. All right. And so that the very existence of telepathy, opens up an entire realm of exploration that is unseen to the eye, almost impossible, maybe impossible to measure, other than it happens, right? And led to a great deal of research into what we'll call the psychic world, and so forth, precognition, what do they call it? Psychokinesis, remote viewing, and so forth, which obviously is a pretty esoteric areas. But they were all being done by our government in secret. They classified all of this, primarily because there was this kind of connection to the ET reality and what they knew, with telepathy being, I think, the most significant component. At the same time, there was an effort to try to explore these realms in the public domain. The government didn't encourage this. A paranormal program developed at Duke University. There was a pretty significant program that developed at Princeton, and that was kind of out there. And of course, there were contactees. They were having these experiences, whether they were talking about it or not. So let's just say after Roswell, this other extraordinary aspects of the world was starting to seep in to the consciousness of more and more people. Meanwhile, of course, the ET hard wired phenomena was going on, and sightings were being seen, and they had crash vehicles, and they're doing engineering, re-engineering, which certainly helped to create this massive technological revolution. All right. But they didn't want these areas engaged. And so they did not help. They weren't putting billions of government dollars into public programs to engage the idea of telepathy or psychokinesis or any of this stuff. Leave it to the general people. And the general people got into it. And slowly after the war, you started to see some interesting things happening. As more and more people started to look at life and the world in much more non-traditional ways. Up until World War II, the pretty much the world religions operated as they always have, relatively defined, relatively stable. After the war, things started changing pretty quickly. By the 1970s, even in the 60s, you saw this kind of happening. If you look at the sexual revolution, the hippies and so forth, they were operating in another place. Psychedelic drugs kind of helped there, but psychedelic drugs were basically a higher form of technology operating in a brain at the point we didn't really know. The New Age phenomena developed, a term that referred to people that saw the world as a new age in a new way and were prepared to explore a whole range of things that, by and large, mainstream world didn't want anything to do with. And that has continued. But as I pointed out, the government didn't want it. Ultimately, they shut down the Duke program, so it went private. They shut down the Princeton program. They did everything they can to keep all of the research inside, private as long as they could, secret. Of course, the remote viewing stuff eventually leaked out. Right? We started learning about this. And so that is kind of the background that is somewhat not talked about much. That it's not just about hardware, saucers, star-to-star travel, right? And whatever tech they have, which we have gotten and are re-engineering, it's about the fact that it's increasingly obvious to people that one of the aspects of a much more advanced civilization is a greater understanding of these subtle realms and how they work, of which telepathy is one of them. All right. And so that's all been pretty cool. And so it's not surprising that in the late 70s, the New Age movement, with all of those interesting explorations into the subtle and the esoteric, kind of married up with the UFO movement. One, they had open minds, and it was like, hey, we're open to anything. Come on. The UFO people desperately needed places to speak, to make some money, to get the word out. And so before you know it, at every one of these conferences, consciousness, New Age, whatever, there would be people talking about this issue. And that actually solidified for decades until it became ingrained. We're about to have an example of that in about 4 weeks at the Conscious Life Expo, which has been an example of this for, I don't know, 20 some years. So you have these two things running together. Okay, fine. And so with that as background, let me talk about two things. One, if you haven't already found them, you've got to go find the telepathy tapes. It's easy to just Google telepathy tapes. It's that simple. The telepathy tapes. And these emerged out of the work of Diane Hennessy Powell, a highly trained psychiatrist who used to teach at Harvard. In fact, when she taught at Harvard, her office was 2 doors down from John Mack's. And she started, well, she's been doing a lot of things her whole life into a whole range of areas. Go to her website, DianeHennessyPowell.com, and definitely check out the bio. But one of her specialties was savant people, which is very interesting. Everybody knows that. There can be extraordinary. Everybody knows that. They're part of the artistic spectrum. Most people know that. One thing not enough people know is that the increase in on the spectrum autistic children is exploding. Boom. At the rate it's going, if it continues, 1 out of every child will be autistic or a savant or a savant autistic or autistic, whatever, which is, I don't know what to make about that. The government has nothing to say about it, doesn't want to talk about it, don't even need it. Even the national health groups, I don't want to talk about it. She engaged it for 15 years. And lo and behold, in that work, she discovered something rather extraordinary. It turns out that she was able to determine beyond any reasonable doubt that certain kids on the spectrum, savants, deep, could telepathically communicate with others, particularly like a mother, right? But in some cases with a non-relative. And she just worked on this and kind of privately. It wasn't really out there much as far as I know, because again, you talk about UFO research, right? Which for years was like, are you out of your mind? Well, a telepathy researcher, not going to get major grants from the government or Harvard. So she worked in San Diego. Eventually, she went up to Medford, one of the great places in the country where she continued to work on this. It finally got to the point where she wanted to go public. And so what she did was, with the aid of Kai Dixon, she filmed a substantial number of interviews with these children and demonstrating this telepathic power. And this is being done for a documentary, which probably is going to come out this year at some point. It's going to be quite a documentary, all right? But they did something very smart and appropriate. They put the audio version of these interviews up on the net for free so that people could listen to them. And just listening to them, let me tell you, they will get your attention. And obviously that's going to promote the hell out of this documentary. So it's probably going to be a smash hit. This is a big deal. The confirmation of telepathy, even if it's just in extraordinary children like savants, is a huge ontological shock for every government in the world. Because, and I was told this 20 some years ago, when you're looking for excuses as to why this truth embargo is so tenacious, so relentless, conducted at any cost, right? To almost any measure, hopefully not too far. We are a good country, supposedly. Why? Well, I knew kind of why. There's some fairly straightforward reasoning, but I was told years ago, one of the reasons they simply have to embargo this is they know if they confirm the extraterrestrial presence, they confirm contactees. And if they confirm contactees, that confirms telepathy, at least between humans and extraterrestrials, all the extraterrestrials, very notable, all right? And once it's been confirmed in the public arena, untold billions of dollars will come in from researchers and billionaires and whatever to study it properly. 1,000,000 times more than, say, Duke was ever to do. And before you know it, they've discovered kind of how it happens, maybe the genetic aspect of it. And the next thing you know, you've got a pretty substantially telepathic citizenry. And I can tell you, nothing puts the fear of God into an authoritarian person or authorities like a telepathic citizenry that is able to read your mind and thus understand and determine every lie you make. So, and it's just in general. That's a whole nother world, right? It is a paradigm shift, probably even bigger than the paradigm shift to acknowledging ET presence.
Mm.
And in that regard, I would like to mention that we have been very fortunate in that we have secured Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell to be a CITD featured speaker at Contact in the Desert, May 29 to June 2. She will certainly do a couple panels and a lecture. She may do a workshop and an intensive. We'll see. It's up to her. And so I'm very happy about that. I was able to secure that. So with that kind of as a prelude, okay, there's something else going on. And that, of course, is the political process of ending the truth embargo that has suppressed all the information about the ETs to the extent that they possibly could, the technology, the bodies, all the re-engineering, all the learning, all the intellectual stuff, all of that. And of course, the truth of the telepathic nature of advanced beings, which apparently seems to be a fundamental in the universe, sort of like, the laws of physics, right? Every planet has the same law of gravity. It would seem, given we have 5 or 6 species here, all telepathic, that you can't get sentient without eventually getting telepathic. It seems to be a manifestation of sentience itself once it has developed a little further. Or once you're further advanced, particularly in the area of genetics, it's possible to do little, how would you say, CRISPR cutting and put a gene here and a gene there, and voila, you have a nice radio that can send and receive. I don't know, but it's a big deal. Okay, now, while all of this is going on, there is another engagement, and that is the formal engagement of the ETs and the human race, now robustly 78 years old. I put the beginning of this in Roswell, at July the 8th, 1947. And why I say that, beginning of the truth embargo, rather, is that was the evening that Roger Ramey held another press conference and said, this is just a weather balloon. There's nothing to see here, right? And so, and that was July of 1947, all right? In July of 1952, we had a flyby over Washington, a big flap, but not as long as huge as some, but it was all over Washington, D.C. and the Capitol. So that gave it 10 times more significance. And that flap, UFO flap, which was seen and photographed, though the photographs seem to have disappeared, but they've been rendered, scared the hell out of the United States government because they were hoping that wouldn't happen, but it did. And so they did the best. They responded to it. They said, there's nothing to see here. It's okay, not a big deal. Donald Keogh said otherwise. He said, no, those are extraterrestrials. And then they convened a panel conveniently out of the CIA that basically concluded there's no threat, but the people can't handle it. So we're just going to suppress it. And that's the formal beginning, I guess you could say, of it. And now that was 47. That was 47. So now we're 77 years on, and that policy of embargo is finally coming to an end. It has been a very difficult thing to end this. It has been brutal. But given the size of the paradigm shift, in other words, the change in thinking and the change in the processing of power and rule, right? It's even bigger than, say, the civil rights change, which was a big deal. There were some laws passed. People had to observe certain laws about race and so forth that they didn't like, but they tried, they complied by and large. This is way bigger than that. All right. And so we tried to get this embargo ended, and every manner of obstacle has been put in the way. But when I said that the last, going back to last 84 years has been the most spectacular technological advancement in all human history, I was not whistling Dixie, okay? And that technological change included the rise of mass global communications at the citizen level at very little cost. It includes the internet. It includes social media. It includes websites. It includes massive fiber optics. It includes satellites. And now it includes podcasts like this. All right. This massive change, right, has ultimately made the truth embargo impossible. It just cannot sustain this, but they've done their best. All right. And we've been working toward it and working toward it. But we're still not there. And the ETs have been watching this all along. And two things have recently happened. One, we have gotten ourselves within inches of nuclear weapon use. We're practically there. It'll be a torpedo, it'll be a nuke shell in the Ukraine, or it'll be a terrorist bomb, which is the worst of them all. We're right there. Could happen tomorrow. Trust me. There's logically no reason it won't. And that is huge. It's a big deal. And they've known about that all along. There's a reason that they show up en masse after we drop the bombs on Hiroshima and have never left since en masse. Okay. So that's a big deal. At the same time, we have made so much progress toward disclosure, but we can't quite close the deal, and we're running out of time. And so 2 years ago, a UFO flap began, but it wasn't immediately apparent because these days it's hard to know what a flap is. I mean, there's stuff coming in here, there, whatever. You get the sighting in an article. But we now realize that something big was developing. And the first hint I got was some time ago, about 2 years ago, when I saw a film that came out and got spread around about stuff swarming around a warship off of San Diego, United States warship. It got a lot of attention. All right. And people, oh, what is this? What is this? And they sort of referred to it as drones. They said it's drones, a drone swarm around the ship. And I said, well, that's interesting. But of course, I also thought something else. That can't happen. It cannot happen, period. No warship will let drones travel in its vicinity that isn't our drones and just let them do it. They will blow them to hell, period. It's not an option. Absolutely, certainly. And it didn't happen. So what's going on? But I filed that away because this stuff is happening all the time. It's just a giant rush of things and evidence and videos and God knows what. And then on May the 17th, 2022, the first hearing since 1968 was held before, I think, a subcommittee of the House Armed Services. Gallagher was on there, and I forget some of the others. And they brought in Moultrie and Bray, who were then running the ATP task force, or the UAP task force, rather. And it's in early stages. They wanted to check in, give a little briefing. They didn't have much to say. There were a couple of strong questions asked, particularly by Gallagher, which kind of caught them by surprise. But overall, it was not huge. But something happened. They showed that video in that hearing, which they simply did not have to do. You do that. There's a lot of videos out there. Why are they showing this video of a drone swarm around a ship? I mean, Bray can't deal with it. They're not going to be able to deal with it, but they showed it anyway. And so what Bray does is he kind of debunks it. You know, it's like a camera angle that looks like this, but there's really nothing there, whatever. And that was that. They moved on. I had to conclude that the reason they did it was to get a little debunk there because that was a problem for them. And now we know why. Because as you move forward from May 17th, or at least that period, more and more things started turning up about more and more military and other sensitive facilities. And the amount was not enough to trigger a mass response because we're always getting stuff in. You know about that. It's not like we'd have the money, millions of dollars, to catalog everything, analyze it deeply, go out, do checks. No, just we process this stuff knowing where it's all leading. And that continued. And then, of course, the disclosure process was underway at the time, making some progress with some setbacks. And then the war in the Ukraine getting worse and worse and worse, the threats growing and growing. And then the Middle East completely blows up, sky high. And all of a sudden, a few months ago, all hell broke loose.
Right.
And what they started was the greatest UFO flap in history. Hundreds of these, what we'll call craft or phenomena, which they can create. What they don't seem to be piloted, but we don't know. And if they're not piloted, whatever, anything unpiloted in the sky is a drone. Period. All right. So we'll assume they're unpiloted. Therefore, they're ET drones. They're flying all over the place. Very obvious. Not the daytime so much. At the night when you can see them. And they're not flying over the middle of Nebraska or North Dakota, where who the hell would even see it? They're flying over military bases, which means absolutely they will be seen, filmed, and it's a big deal because that's not allowed to happen, period.
So the bottom line, Steve, is that these drone sightings we're seeing now are ET or mixed ET military. What's the bottom line with what's happening now?
Okay, I'll give you so how much time have I got? Because obviously I'm almost out of time. What have I got?
That's okay. That's okay. It's a great history you gave us, so that's good.
So This is the biggest UFO flap ever, and it is intentional. There's no question that this is not just, oh, gee, we're just feeling like getting out more. No. And immediately it created a massive problem for the United States government, the Department of Defense. Huge. What do you do? What do you do with 8, 9, 20 information plasma balls here, there, whatever, over multiple facilities, even in other countries? You step out in front of a mic and the reporter says, do you know what these are? No, we don't. You don't? Well, if you don't know what they are, that would be a threat. And if they say, yeah, it's a threat, that everybody puts their hands up and say, oh my God, all hell breaks. So no, we don't know what they are, but they're not a threat. Well, that doesn't make any sense. And so, and could they be foreign? No, and they can't be foreign. And so there's nothing they could do. As that thing is developing in the early days, they're going, what in the hell are we going to do? Because we can't stop the ETs from doing whatever the hell they want. And so it appears that the extraterrestrials have a game plan here. And it's this: we're going to paint the US government particularly into a corner when there is no way out but to disclose. We're going to force it, right? And so they're doing this. It's the videos are coming in, and at some point going back, I'm not sure when, I have the money to follow all this stuff that closely, though I do track all the media. The government sat back and said, the only thing that we can do to minimize this and hold it off for a while, we've got tons of drones. We've got all kinds of drones, many of which people have never seen. They're absolutely advanced technology. They're completely classified. They can do things like you can't imagine. Drone research has been gung-ho for decades and decades. It's the future of war, assuming we keep doing war. And so they got plenty of them. So they started launching these drones up into these events whenever they happen. Right? They're not putting them up over military bases where there's no plasma craft or balls or whatever the hell. They're putting them up into the phenomena. And it's pretty clear for a reasonable person to kind of see, oh, that's a drone. And so they've inserted drones into the phenomena, which means they can call it a drone swarm and therefore imply it's all drones. These kind of really look like drones, but that group of plasma balls, well, yeah, they're drones too. Mm-hmm. It's nothing but semantics.
It looks like, though, Steve, there's a plan here on the ET part. This is the first step.
Absolutely.
1, 2, yeah.
They are trying to put the government in a position where it has no move other than to say checkmate. All right. And so this has now been going on, and the government's doing everything it can, but it gets worse and worse because once they put those drones up, it gave themselves bought a little time by saying, we're talking drone swarms. And again, the thing is so huge, the press is there. They're talking to Kirby. They're talking to what's her name at the White House. Anybody that's in front of a mic with respect to the Department of Defense and so forth are getting asked these questions by reporters, and they're serious.
Right.
And so the question is pretty basic. Whose drones are these that you say they're up there? And it clearly are. At least the ones that look like drones. I'm not sure about the other ones. And the only answer has to be not ours. They can't say they're ours. If they say they're ours, the next question is, how in the hell are you flying our drones over these bases for months? What the hell are you doing? I mean, all hell would break loose, right? Is there some special project? Could it be? You're putting people at risk. This is ridiculous. You're embarrassing the United States. So they can't say they're ours. They have to say they're not ours. The next question is obvious. If they're not ours, are they other nations? They can't say yes. Next question is, wait a minute, you're saying that there's hundreds of drones from other nations, maybe even China and Russia, flying over our military bases, and you're doing nothing? You're not shooting them down. You're not trying to capture them. You're not even sending up craft, by and large, with the odd exception. You can't say another nation, so they say no, not another nation, which is logically absurd.
Right.
They can't prove a negative. There's no way they could know they're not from another nation. But at this point, it doesn't matter.
So the only natural next step is the government say, guess what? We have company. Is that what you say?
What is essentially they have now put the government in an impossible place, which includes the presidency, includes the DOD, it includes the Congress and everything, so that to help ensure that all this process we have gone so far on, which is to complete the UAP Disclosure Act, expand and get that done. That could happen tomorrow, but also have the additional hearings that absolutely have to have, particularly from their witnesses, which would then set the president up to disclose. The opportunity for that to happen for Biden is gone. However, the opportunity to happen for President-elect Trump is not gone. In fact, it's ripe. It's right there. And so they're basically setting up a situation where a president is going to have to disclose. And it's probably going to be Trump within the first 45 days or so of his administration. And the hearings are about to be held after the inauguration. And they have made it clear they want the nuclear shutdown witnesses. All right. And so what you have is two possible outcomes here. Either the new president will go to the Republican-controlled Senate Intel Committee and say, look, you got to get that hearing done. And that we really should have done some time ago. Let's get those witnesses in, big deal, whole week, get the hearing done, set the stage, and then he can walk out and say, look, we're not alone. There's non-human tech here. You're going to know more about that real soon. And he's the disclosure president and goes down in history. All right. The other way it can happen, and realistically could happen, is unlike any other president we've ever seen. This is a president that will do whatever he wants. And so unlike Clinton or Carter, and pretty much anyone else, if he were to go to the Defense Department, even his own appointee, Secretary of Defense, or a CIA director, whatever, the head of national intelligence, who he also appointed, and says, "Look, I think we need to confirm this non-human intelligence," and they said, "No, Mr. President, can't do that. Can't do that. People can't handle the truth. It's going to create all kinds of problems." He is the one president who will tell him, "Well, you can go screw yourself. I'm going to do it, whether you like it or not." And so the other way it'll happen is Trump will act unilaterally. He will simply step forward and say, based upon what is simply out there now, just in the public domain, I'm confirming to you right now that we have non-human tech and non-human bodies. We're not alone. And then the hearings will happen pretty quickly and back him up. Either way, we get disclosure, capital D. We're in the new paradigm. And the only difference between those two scenarios, and in the hearing first, then the president scenario, the other heads of state will jump in board like that. Okay, almost immediately, they're coming right out. If the president operates unilaterally and does it alone, in a sense, they may hold off for a while for a couple of hearings to take place before backing him up. But it's a distinction without a difference.
Well, that's amazing, Steve. That is a fantastic overview from the history, the beginning of the phenomenon, right to the present time. We'll see how it's unfolded, will unfold and get to some of the other people on here. But thank you. Stick around, Steve, because
I want to do two things. First of all, thank you, Steve. We let you go about 3 times longer than you were scheduled for because you gave a tremendous history lesson. It was great, and you set beautiful context. And I also want to really encourage everyone to join the Paradigm Research Group. This is, of course, we've talked about it a lot on this show. A lot of our favorite people are involved with this, including Steve. It is probably the most important organization you can join to really support getting positive action. Steve, is there anything you want to say briefly about the Paradigm Research Group?
Well, anticipating disclosure, I converted a couple of months to a nonprofit 501c3 based in Washington, D.C. The board of directors is myself, Danny Sheehan, and Paul Heineck. We're already receiving donations, and the more donations I get, the more stuff I can do. All right, that's number one. And that's all on the website. You can see the website is now in transition. It's converted, but it's got about 50% more work to be done. But it's okay. But it's going to get better. And then the other thing is that there's another organization that you need to engage, join up, and pay attention to, and that's the New Paradigm Institute.org. Yeah. Paradigm got that in common, got the common board. There's a reason for that. It's not an accident. The New Paradigm Institute has much more money, and it's already got multiple projects underway, including how to engage the Congress and so forth. So those two, but then there are other organizations literally forming, Soul Foundation, UAP Disclosure Fund, like 2 or 3 more I just learned about. They are literally coming together in real time because every single day, more and more people understand disclosure is about to happen at last, and we need to get ready for it now.
And here again is New Paradigm Institute. We actually have had Danny on the show twice in the past 6 months, including when he kicked this off. But absolutely, New Paradigm Institute is also really, really important. And we're going to hear tonight, Steve, from some other very important organizations that have formed where people can participate, connect, and we're going to be learning about those later this evening. I want to invite our other presenters.
Yes.
Please keep to your time. We let Steve go for it because he's SteveBassett. And Steve, you really gave a wonderful historical context. But let's try and keep to our agenda. It's already going to be a 3.5 hour show, everybody. That's why we start at 5 o'clock tonight. And I'm going to turn over to you, Alan, to introduce our next guest.
Yeah, and thank you.
guys.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. You know, Steve, this is not something he just picked up. He's been at this for 40 years and
29 years, man. I'm not
39 years, excuse me. So it's his passion. It's my passion, and it's a lot of people here on this broadcast. I think it's the most exciting thing happening on the planet. That is why I'm so happy to introduce the next speaker, Carolyn Brouillard, and she does a Substack blog called Getting Ready for the Galactic Age. She's also the managing partner of Exo Futures Consulting, exploring humanity's preparation for contact with non-human intelligence. And I found her on the Substack and I thought, wow, these essays on drones are so intelligent and so well thought out. Some of what SteveBassett covered, but also you have your own insights about what's happening now. And, you know, if you differ with Steve about some things, give us your overview of the drone situation. We already got the history from 1947 to the present. So give us your understanding of what do you think is going on here in the last couple of months and where we're heading with disclosure.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. I love to receive the invitation and be introduced to your beautiful community. And I also love the way Steve teed up sort of the larger issue at play here. Disclosure isn't happening in a vacuum. You know, I think sometimes we underestimate what a profound change disclosure and contact represents, specifically for humanity, but also for the existing power structures. So just building on that for a moment, I think when people realize what truly is at stake, it starts to make a little bit more sense, the desperate and robust efforts to stall it or stop it, and to try to control it. You know, really, disclosure, I wrote this in a recent article, it's the final nail in the coffin for the old power elite, because it's the end of that materialist scientific worldview that limits our reality to what people can see, touch, measure, you know, everything that we have through our physical senses. It wakes us up to, as I think Steve said, the subtle realms, you know, this grand existence and really who we are as source, as the divine, and that cannot be controlled or manipulated. So that is really what's at stake here. And I think part of why how the drone thing fits in. So I also want to start with just kind of this conversation can sometimes get a little heavy when you're talking about conspiracy and secrets and things like that and the deep state. There's a lot of different ways to think about this, but I like to reiterate that everything is serving humanity's awakening in some way, whether it's this drone situation or unfolding world events. You know, people are waking up through their own revelation and awareness, or they're being driven there by just the sheer absurdity of our world these days. You know, it's getting to the point where the secrecy, the control, the manipulation is just getting impossible not to see. So the timing of those two paths, you know, may be different, and one may be a gentler ride than the other, but the end point is the same. It's the will for something better. It's the drive for truth and the choice to evolve instead of going backwards. So I think we're seeing this drone situation come now as the momentum behind disclosure is accelerating. I don't think that's an accident. So what are we seeing in the skies? At this point, I I'm kind of in an all of the above. I think it's human and non-human. I think it is domestic and some foreign. I think there's some prosaic explanations like birds and planes, as well as some top secret technology that's being revealed. As it tends to be the case with everything that's engineered to capture the public's attention, it's really never just one thing. I think what we're seeing here is multiple actors and multiple agendas at play. We're seeing these quote unquote drones across multiple countries. This has been occurring for multiple months or years, depending on how wide you cast the net. And we're seeing advanced technology that we haven't perhaps seen before. So I think that suggests a level of coordination that transcends the traditional nation state borders. This is not simply a US thing with, even just the US government behind it. So certainly, non-human intelligence would qualify for that, having that global reach and the technology. And I do think that's a lot of what's showing up. My perspective is that they're more, they've always been here. They've always been making themselves known, and there is more of that now, but that they're perhaps leveraging a situation that was otherwise intended to be a psychological operation. When the government says they don't know, that's a good sign that there's probably some kind of psyop going on. When you think, given that we have drone warfare and the sophistication of the surveillance state on this planet, it is completely unfathomable that they would not be able to track and see where these things are coming from. That's part of that cognitive dissonance where it just doesn't make sense that, that the government's answer is credible. We don't know means we don't want to tell you, basically.
In one of your articles, you wrote about also, maybe you've had more to say there, sorry, how the drone situation could end. Go ahead, but continue, sorry.
Yeah, so, I do think this has a large psychological operation component, but I think there's intended effects and unintended consequences. I do feel that the US government and possibly other governments know that the clock's ticking on disclosure. I would agree with what Steve said about disclosure is happening, and the US government's kind of painted into a corner, because it's worth remembering the US government nor any government is in control of contact. Humanity's not calling the shots on when they show up. They are. And I don't think they're, bending the knee to our government on that. That said, I do think both the NHI and the government wants to acclimate people to unknown objects in the sky and get people comfortable with the idea of there being other beings. I do think this is a test run to test public responses, state and local capabilities, how the media treats this, people's psychological responses. I do think we're watching a disclosure exercise in real time. It's just heavily manipulated and heavily controlled. And I think part of the reason is they really want to keep control of this process. Now, just how sort of the energetics of manipulation work is, the more you try to control a situation, the more you draw an out of control outcome. So, I do think that they're trying to confuse us, so that people don't know what to believe. I think they're creating suspense that creates this sort of tension where people look to the government for official answers, even though no one trusts the government anymore. I think with this fear narrative, they are teeing something up here.
Are you saying they being the ETs or the government? Who were
Sorry,
they?
the government, yeah. Speaking more from like the PSYOP perspective here. I also wrote about this. There was a period where the articles started getting more shaming and ridicule of people reporting drones. And it was sort of like a throwback to the UFO stigma that all of a sudden there's this, that it's ridiculous to be thinking about this. So there's that pressure for conformity and just shut down dialogue on this. And it could be they're just trying to distract us from real disclosure and the million other untoward things that they're doing around the planet. Now, the unintended consequences, really quick, and then I'll get to what I think is going to happen, is as I was saying in the beginning, I think all of this is serving to wake people up. It's strengthening our collective capacity for adaptation and growth. It's giving us practice in managing uncertainty and dealing with the unknown. It's helping us form networks to share information and build communities of support where we can rely on one another instead of looking to traditional authorities for answers. We're also, I think, getting really wise to PSYOP tactics and strategies. And as that happens, we're strengthening our immunity to them. You know, if you think about it now, and I don't know whether X is the best representation of this or not, but these, you know, what the media is putting out and what the government's putting out, people are seeing it, you know, swiftly and robustly as the lies that they are. You know, things that were accepted at face value now just don't stand a chance if they're not in integrity and they're not in authenticity. So in terms of going forward, you know, in part, we just have to see, like I said, I do think disclosure's chugging along. I don't think the government's going to be able to control it the way that they want to. That said, I do think this drone situation is probably building towards some kind of climax. You know, whether that centers on the drones, some people have predicted some kind of drone melee or war or some kind of false flag. That's a little problematic in my perspective, but I do feel like there's enough energy here that there needs to be some kind of release. Again, whether that's a drone event or something that leverages the groundwork that they've laid with the drones for something else. So I'll just wrap up quickly by saying, you know, I think this situation is presenting us with a choice. We can either succumb to fear and be led astray by the uncertainty, or we can rise to the occasion and claim our sovereignty and use this as a moment for growth.
Wow.
Carolyn,
Great.
thank you so much. And I want to let everyone know we're going to have a couple of roundtable discussions. So we're going to be hearing from Carolyn and the others a little bit later on. But briefly, quickly, I encourage everybody to register for her Substack. Obviously, this is a very intelligent woman. She's got some really great points. I love your use of the word robust. And you can find her at thegalacticage.substack.com. The Galactic Age, period, Substack, period, .com. And Carolyn, thank you so much for being with us. I'm looking forward to hearing more from you a little bit later in the show.
And I recommend her articles on drones on there and ET contact in general. She has about 10 or 20 articles that are really well thought out. Thank you, Carolyn, for being with us today. So stick around.
And here is Dr. Tara, our other co-host, to introduce our next guest.
Thank you, Scott and Carolyn. That was wonderful. I'm a mega fan already. I've subscribed to everything. So thank you so much for that. And just coming on now with Dr. Branco, Dr. Daniel Branco. Daniel has more degrees than a thermometer. He has an MD, a PhD, and an MBA. He did his postdoc at Harvard, where he developed surgical techniques to prevent seizures, and he's just an amazing person and a good friend. And I know, Daniel, that you share this perspective that moving away from fear and towards raising consciousness really is at the crux of this. So I want to turn it over to you and get your brilliant perspective on drones and disclosure more generally and broadly.
Well, first of all, Tara, thanks for the introduction, and thanks everyone for being here. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Alan. It's a pleasure being here. When it comes to the world of disclosure, I'm a newcomer. I've been involved with the phenomenon for at least 30 years as an experiencer, but as a public person speaking on the phenomenon, that's quite new to me. as Tara mentioned, my background is in neurology and neuroscience. Uh, I'm not a professional author or anything. I don't dedicate full time to this disclosure movement. I work as an executive in biotech, so I'm pretty much like a 3D person and like a establishment person. But I enjoy the opportunity of being here because I believe it is time for us to start making this 3D world really transition into something new. And I appreciate so much the work that all of you have been doing as the pioneers in this space, to which I'm so new. So my interest, well, first of all, I think it's safe to say that I decided to pursue, and the reason I have so many titles is that I decided to pursue a career as a and go to medical school in the first place because I wanted to understand and learn about the brain. And then I thought that growing up in Brazil, that's where I'm original from. I thought that learning about the brain would be like the ultimate challenge. And I wanted to learn and understand how the brain creates consciousness. That was back in the 90s when I went to medical school. And eventually became a neurologist and a neuroscientist. And one day I was about to become faculty at Cornell University in the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in brain mapping, doing brain mapping research. And I decided to quit academia because by that time I was realizing that the brain doesn't really create consciousness the way we believe, or the way science traditionally believes it does. And I thought I was not going to accomplish my journey in academia. That's when I decided to quit. And then I did an MBA just to make a living and pursue a career as an entrepreneur. But my life quest and my ultimate goal is to understand. And I'm glad that SteveBassett mentioned about telepathy, because that's not to say that my ultimate goal is to understand telepathy, but to understand that kind of phenomenon, that kind of conscious experience, which in my opinion is way more relevant than orbs in the sky and the physical phenomenon that we are able to see. I think that most of the answers are coming or will come from within. Throughout my journey, my work, I came to understand that consciousness is primary, is more fundamental than the brain. And if that's the case, everything that happens phenomenally, like in 3D, everything that is measurable is less relevant to those things that can only be understood by experiencing. And my goal, my personal goal, is to help society uh, migrate or shift to that understanding, because I don't really think we're gonna have full disclosure whereas for as long as we don't understand the nature of the phenomenon. So it's not really about, even if the government came out and said, oh, so these craft are real, and then all of these VC funds decide to invest in developing craft technology. I don't really think we are still touching the bigger revelation. The bigger revelation cannot be given to us. We actually have to reach out to it. And I think that's one of the reasons why disclosure is so difficult and intricate, complicated, because it's not just about telling it's real. Because then the question is, what is real? And the answer is much more complex than our 3D paradigm can really actually provide to us. So sorry if I spoke too much, but that's what I'm coming from, and that's how I intend to add to this conversation.
You know, I really love how you're helping us to remember that there's everything going on out there, but ultimately it's about raising our consciousness. So of course you came through Dr. Tara, who runs the Consciousness Club. And that is always, what's the name of the show? The Awakening World. We've been doing this for a long time. So it is all about, okay, it's fascinating what's happening out there, but how's that changing the way we see ourselves and raising our consciousness, raising our vibration? So,
yes, I think without raising consciousness and vibrations, we're not really going to understand what's going on, even if we are told there is something going on. Because I don't really think the government knows deeply what's going on, because they are not high vibrating. It's not a high vibrating structure. So it's impossible for them to really understand what's going on just because of that little fact that they are not really high vibe.
Absolutely. And I have to say, coming from the ivory tower myself, having been on faculty at Cornell as a psychologist and talking to you, Daniel, it's really reassuring for me to hear you say that and to really kind of come out of the closet as someone who is an experiencer and who understands these, we'll say non-3D, 45D experiences. I think it's really important that people like myself and everybody else hear your perspective. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I personally appreciate it. And I know I could speak for a lot of other people when I say that they probably appreciate it as well. So thank you so much, Daniel.
And Daniel, I'm hoping during the roundtable discussion, if you're willing, that you might be willing to share a little bit about your actual experience, because then that can open the door for other people to share. So that would be wonderful.
Of course, there's quite a few, so it might take a while. But
pick your favorite one.
We'll try to narrow it down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
Thank you, Daniel.
So much.
Dr. Tara, I know you've got another guest to introduce.
I do. Thanks, Scott. So next up, we have Eduardo Mace. So like Daniel, Eduardo is also Brazilian. And we were all at Soul Symposium together this year, which is one of the budding conferences that Steve had referenced earlier. And Eduardo is an entrepreneur, multimedia software pioneer, developer, editor, and multimedia author. And we are so lucky and thrilled to have him here to hear his perspective on souls, drones, and disclosure. So welcome, Eduardo.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. Thank you, Tara. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Scott. It's as with Daniel, it's really the first time I come out in public and talk about these things. I love what Steve put in terms of history and the contributions of everybody here and the positive energy that everybody's having in the chat here in Zoom. I love it. This is all very interesting and uplifting. I come from a long journey as an entrepreneur. I mean, I started my journey when I was 12 years old. I was very young. And obviously I, did business administration economics at university, but my life was centered around innovation, especially software innovation. And I come from a world where process is king, right? And I'd really like to sort of share a brief moment of how I got to the consciousness part, which is what Tara does so well at the Consciousness Club. And the discussions we're having there are so amazing. Thank you, Tara. I have always been very connected to, sci-fi in general, because I'm a nerd and a techie. And that really makes for the imagination. You can expand your horizon. But I've always been a publisher as a software entrepreneur. I've always published software. Software is like a book, right? But it's code instead of written words only. And I came to the US about 10 years ago, and in 2023 I moved to New York. 2022, sorry, actually. And in 2023, April, I had my first experience. I woke up to quite suddenly at 5 a.m. to an orb on my bed, right next to me, about 3 feet away. And I tried to wake my wife up, and I came out of bed, and the orb was still there. It was about a minute and a half, and I really couldn't understand. My wife was go back to sleep. It's just a dream, and I was completely taken aback by the whole thing. But I decided that maybe it's just my head, you know. I came back, but that bugged me a lot because it felt real, and I touched things. I really woke up. There wasn't anything that you could say was hypnopompia or hypnagogia, right? Woke dream kind of thing. And so 2 weeks later, I'm at home. I work from home. I mentor a lot of startups and scale-ups in the US and worldwide. And there was this heavy sound of a chopper right above my house, and the whole house started to tremble vigorously, like an earthquake. And I ran out the house. It took me a while because I had to go downstairs and my pet as well, right? We woke at what's going on. And above the house, about 60 feet above the house, there was a Chinook. And I thought, fucking hell, the American government's after me. They found out about the orb in my room. I was okay, this is crazy. But I have been a long time investor in defense tech. I gave that up, after the experience, but these experiences I'm going to relate to you. But I noticed that there was stuff wrong with the chopper, right? The wheels weren't in the right place. The lights weren't turned off. It was completely black. The lights were in the wrong place. The windows were in the wrong place as well. It wasn't a Chinook, but it was a Chinook. The two, propellers, that Chinooks have, it was a little smaller than Chinook. And I thought that was strange. And there was no wind. There was only vibration and sound coming from it. Well, very well. After that, I started to have a lot of synchronicity events happening around the house. The clock always went like 1, 2, 3, 4. It was always 12:34. It was always 9, 8. Everything seems to be conspiring against you. And then I started to have high strangeness in the house, poltergeist effects. And I didn't know how to cope with it. And the fact that drove a certain amount of fear from me, I started to notice and correlate the fear with the volume of the high strangeness, right? So I started to keep after months of this, my wife also was part of a couple of experiences as well. We saw a cloud form from right outside my house from the garden, just come out of the street in front of my garden, just came out and stood there and started moving around, doing right turns and so on. There were multiple events of light turning on and off, things being misplaced. It was chaos. I had no framework for dealing with this. Well, and one day, it was night, I saw a shadow pass the window of my front to the front of the house. So I opened the door because I decided I'm going to go and confront whatever it is, right? And a huge, very pungent sulfur smell came to my nostrils, and that meant, Jesus Christ, this is not going the way I want this to go. So I went back into the house, told my wife, but I was in a bad place. It was almost desperation. The next day, I decided to go out to the garden. It was a beautiful day. And I talked to the heavens. I didn't know what to do. Talk to the heavens. I'm a process guy. I work with software. It's all math, it's all tables, it's all, mental. And I was an agnostic. And I can't say I am agnostic anymore, but I went to the garden and asked the heavens, this has to stop. Me, my family, they don't deserve this. Because I had read up, obviously, during these months of high strangeness in the house, I started reading up. And I know how contagious this can be. So I didn't want this for my family or for myself. And as I asked it, boom, it stopped. It stopped right there and then. And I thought, wow. After a couple of days of nothing happening, right? The synchronicity went away, my strangeness went away. I thought, wow. And I learned that to control my fear meant that I could have peace in dealing with whatever effects were being generated before. But after they left, I started feeling, because I work a lot in the garden, I started feeling a lot more comfortable with everything, as if there was something other than myself, present. And so the animals as I worked in the gardens, the animals would be very close by. And I thought, this is interesting, but kind of scary at the same time, because you don't want them too close. Wait a second. Basically, I decided to test out, after reading a lot about it, that when you have close encounters of this type with an orb, sometimes they alter your consciousness, right? I started reading up on that. And I decided to test it. Why not test it? I'm a process guy. I love the scientific method. Let's test it. So I went to places where people pray. So I went to St. Patrick's in New York. My head caught fire inside the church. It was like crazy. It was driving me towards the back of the church. And I noticed that it was where people prayed. It was the high intensity thing, right? And I thought, this is completely mind-blowing. Wait, does this happen anywhere else in the church? So I noticed one other spot where it happened, and the air was kind of, the effect that I was feeling also translated to the light and the air, how it moved. And I thought, this is interesting. Is it me, just having a sort of, projection, or is this reality? Is this really happening? So I went to other churches. I went to churches in Europe, so I decided to go to tourist churches. Because tourist churches, people don't pray in tourist churches, right? They always have somewhere else they pray, because you can't, it's so full of tourists, right? So I found out, I'd always find out where the chapel was, because I could feel it. And the chapel was hidden. It was behind the church, I didn't know. It was next to a crypt, I didn't know. It was wherever. So I decided that maybe go to places of meditation, right? And see if there's anything there. And bingo, there you go. So wherever there is high vibration and high consciousness, I could feel the energy.
Edward,
So that was wonderful.
Jump in to backup sing here and to let folks know that who are watching, that in our Zoom group chat, so many people are saying that they're relating to your story. And Alan and I are even kind of passing notes electronically behind the scenes here and saying that we had a similar experience in New York City at the Javits Center of all places, where, the least spiritual place on the planet, but Amma was there. And Amma is a very high Hindu living saint, and the energy there was absolutely palpable. And that's a whole other story, but
it sounds though like you're having a Kundalini awakening, and high energy stimulates the vibrational field of the body, and you're switched on now, Eduardo, whether you like it or not.
Right. Right.
So it's great. Welcome to the club.
Thank you.
So
literally,
did you want to conclude? Because we'll get back around to more, because
right. And so very quickly after that, I started having a lot of UAP encounters. I filmed a couple, have photos of others, and sometimes we take pictures and they're there behind us. They're part of life now. And this high consciousness work also led me to telepathy, which is another interesting story.
Thank you so much, Eduardo. And we definitely look forward to hearing a little bit more from you when we go to our roundtable discussion. And it's my honor to introduce our next guest, but as a wonderful and very synchronistic way of introducing him, I have a short video first.
Well, I was gathered in a schoolyard with about 20 other men, and we saw a bright light appear in the distant western skies, and it got closer and closer, and when it was just above the treetops, it changed color, and then it stayed there for a while, and then it disappeared into the distance. And none of us could ever imagine what it was, and I still don't know what it was.
In 76, you said you'd try and release all information to the public and to scientists about other UFO sightings.
Yes.
Do you think you achieved that?
I'm not sure, but we did release a lot of the information, but I don't know how much was not released.
So a little interesting as we honor the great President Jimmy Carter, who of course just passed away, and who I think we've just seen a little clip that he saw a UFO, he became president, he tried to get information out there, and I think you can see when he raises his eyebrows, that tells a lot, doesn't it? Now, what's interesting and very synchronistic is our next guest is our beloved friend, John Martin, who knew Jimmy Carter, played music and guitar for Jimmy. And so it's really beautiful to have John with us. So John, I'm going to bring you on briefly, and you can then introduce the video that you prepared for us. And welcome back to the Awakening World.
Thank you, Scott. And I wanted to dedicate my appearance today to our friend, President Carter. And he was in repose at the Carter Center on Sunday, and I said a prayer for all of the awakening world while I was there with our friend. And he is now on the other side of the veil helping in a way that I know he can. I spoke with him about UFOs over dinner in Spain, and that was the impetus of me beginning my journey. I began playing guitar on my deck, and I began projecting music and positive thought into the universe. And almost immediately, these beautiful crafts started coming in. This beautiful purple plasma bell-shaped craft with a pink ring around the bottom third of the bell was directly over my home. It was silent. I went and Karen came out, and we both watched this beautiful craft. And Scott, what I want everyone to know is it's available to all of us. We all can share who we are, what we love with the universe. And the universe is so ready and willing to interact with us. I've had thousands and thousands of interactions with our star family. I kept playing, and then this beautiful cross and crescent shape, two craft, metallic, burnished metal, the size of office buildings, that came over my home. And I was fooling with my camera, and they said, please don't take our picture. We'll give you something that you can take a picture of. And just a few days later, right above my courtyard in the same spot, was this beautiful heart-shaped cloud. And I actually had Darshan with Amma, and I showed her the picture, and she said, "Oh, heart cloud." And it's a universal, it's just a lovely archetype that I think we all can relate to.
John, thank you. And, you know, for those of you who don't know John, he's one of my favorite guests because John is embodying what we're talking about, raising our consciousness. And when you watch this short video he prepared for us, listen to his voice, listen to how he speaks to the galactic family, how he plays music to them, how he relates and connects to them. And that to me is just a beautiful modeling of what's available for all of us. So here we go with a very short, wonderful video from our beloved friend, John Martin.
Thank you, my friends. How beautiful is that? Thank you, beautiful ones. Thank you, my lovely friends. That was lovely. Thank you so much. Hey, beautiful ones. Hey, my gorgeous friends. Thank you for coming to see me. Hey, beautiful ones. I was asking what your name was. Thank you, sweet friends. Love you. Thank you, friends. Wow. Wow. Oh, there's my friends. Oh, there's two. That's it. Oh, how gorgeous. Wow. Gorgeous. So awesome, friends. Beautifully done. Wow. That was great. Great. Thank you, sweet friends. Wow.
Two. Hey, lovely ones. Hey, gorgeous ones. Oh, how wonderful.
Absolutely beautiful Motuka. Hey, oh, look at y'all. Let's see how this does. Perfect. Right through the center. Gorgeous. Hey, sweet friend. Beautiful. Hey, loveliest. Hey, my dear ones. How gorgeous. It's up there. Yes. Oh, my battery's going low. Don't go out on me now. That's amazing. That's wonderful. Thank you, friends. Wonderful. Thank you, my friends. That's just great. Thank you, lovely friends. Wow. Thank you, beautiful ones. Keep those of y'all in there. Thank you, beautiful friends. Thank you. That was awesome. Wow. That was really awesome. Thank you.
This is John's beautiful book, The Universe Loves You. Of course, that would be the title of John's beautiful book, and I encourage everybody to get it. You can find it on Amazon.
Wow.
That was beautiful, John. Thank you. And as I was watching these videos, I was really reminded of these CE5 experiences that I've had, and I know Alan and others on the call have had as well, when we're out raising our vibration, meditating, tapping into the field, and crafts show up, orbs show up. It's something that I have not talked about publicly, but I've experienced this. Alan and I experienced quite a spectacular show out in Sedona after a very intense meditation with a lot of people who've been practicing meditation for a long time and training their brains with biofeedback at the Biocybernaut Institute to get into these high vibrational states. And we saw 21 craft blink in one by one and move across the sky and blink out one by one. Wasn't Starlink, wasn't a satellite, wasn't anything human. And it was stunningly beautiful. And that loving tone that you have, that's what attracts at least some of these kinds of crafts and orbs in. And so that was beautiful to see. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think it is the feeling, the vibration, you're raising out of the lower chakras. I think, Carolyn, you really hinted at us or talk about some of this directly in what your experience. Do you want to add to like the vibrational aspect of the UFO phenomena there, Carolyn?
Sure. There I am. Yeah, well, I mean, I agree with what's been said by a lot of people so far is that consciousness is primary, and I've also had those kind of personal contact experiences, and whether we call it telepathy or consciousness, just go back to that as the medium to know that we can connect with beings in other dimensions, to feel a sense of kinship and connection with something that's flying up in the sky or appearing. It's really the most magnificent paradigm shifting experience you can have. And again, I think that's going back. It's like we've been so conditioned to stay in survival mode consciousness, these lower frequency states that shut us off from so much of that. And I'm so excited, whether it's like people come onto it through the telepathy tapes or through their own contact experience or a Kundalini awakening, programs such as this, like however people arrive at that expanded consciousness, it's just flooding the collective right now, I think. And it's I think it's acting like a magnet for just, I say disclosure, but like sometimes what I really mean is the contact because we all know, like it's been disclosed, like we all know, it's like we shouldn't need to look to the government for official confirmation. Really, what we're talking about is connection and communication and really starting to create that galactic age that is the next step of our human evolution.
Well, I love what you wrote in the chat about John's video. You said that video montage made my heart swell and third eye blast open. Thank you.
Yes.
Absolutely. And it's, again, just riffing on what Carolyn said and what John is demonstrating for us. We don't have to wait for the government to do anything. Go out into the backyard, go outside, or from your own bed, just tune in. We can have these experiences. And, some of us, it might be experiences with ancestors. Some it might be with what we call angels or archetypes or spiritual beings. For others, ETs. But the veils are thin, and the 100th monkey effect is happening as more and more of these shows, more and more of these conversations take place. The more we all go, oh yeah, that's right. Oh, I can access the quantum field. I can have telepathic connection with beings on the other side. And it's a very exciting time to be alive.
I think our star family recognized the challenges that we are faced with on this very difficult third dimension, as Carolyn was saying. And when we project who we are, when we project the very best of ourselves, it is acknowledged immediately. And I share when I go outside, I talk with our star family. I share things that are happening in my life, challenges I have, wonderful things that are happening, and I can feel their beautiful energy. Even if I don't see them, there's that connection that's always there. And if can you imagine if millions of us do this? We will absolutely change the world. And it's such an honor to be here, Scott. And thank you for having me. And Alan, thank you.
Love you, John. Speaking of Alan, by the way, we are about 40 minutes past with the agenda. So hang in there, everybody. Alan, I think you're up next because you've got some videos to show.
Well, I have some videos. I was going to show the government's videos, but you know what? That just takes us down. Like all they're saying, I'll sum it up and I'll show something else, is that the Pentagon saying we don't know, the papers are saying we don't know, everyone's saying we don't know what these drones are, basically. And then we have someone like, I'm going to show the Chris Bledsoe tape because I think showing the government saying over and over again, you spent millions of dollars. What do you mean you don't know? How could you not know? It's worldwide frustration on the part of the public with the government and the military. And then we have other people who, so does that make sense, Scott? Unless you want to really see.
No, that's fine. And you know what I'd like to do then is show those videos. Then I want to introduce Sylvan and Dr. Kat, and then we'll roll into the roundtable discussion.
Okay, I'm just going to show this one of Chris Bledsoe, who's if anyone doesn't know him, he wrote the book called God and UFOs, and he sees these orbs all the time. And this is what he said actually on that Danny Sheehan special. I just kind of clipped it out here because I think he makes a lot of sense.
I do want to say to everyone in this group that for the last 15 years, I've been 18 years really, 18 years this January, but for 15 years I've been documenting this phenomenon. And I have maintained for 15 years, when I reported to MUFON way back, that these orbs can mimic anything. They mimic airplanes. I have witnessed it myself. One on the ground in front of me shift from a football to a helicopter.
Eduardo was sort of kind of commenting on that possibility, yeah.
In front of me, 150 yards away, and then fly off over my head. And I have witnessed it. I filmed it. I have metal balls. These things turn into metal balls or what looks like raindrops that glow. So a lot of the drones that we may think are drones could be orbs, in fact, mimicking the drones. So there's a lot happening there. I just had to add that in there about this drone thing, because there's videos going around of watching orbs turn into an airplane, what looks like one. But I agree with Steve. I think whoever's up there has a big stake in what's going on down here. Maybe the threat of nuclear war. I do know it's got their attention. It had their attention in World War II. They've shown us that they can turn off our nuclear sites. They can do it, and they monitor our thoughts. They know what you're thinking. Many people come here and see this. Just speak to the sky, and all of a sudden they start showing up and flashing and flying by. It's because they can hear us, and they know what we're thinking. And I'll end it with this: that I do know that they're alarmed at the situation in this world, but I think the good will come. It'll all even out, and we'll get past it with a new knowledge, and there'll be a reset in the way we move forward in our thinking in this world and in our education system. It's got to change. We've been so long saying that we're alone and thinking that. We've got to get out of that. We've got to move forward. We're going to have to realize that there's a higher power above us. However it's laid out, it's there. They've been writing about it for thousands of years. It's the same thing the biblical stories we're talking about. What does that mean? We really don't know. But I can tell you it's there, and I can share it with people, as many as 200 at the time, and do it every time. And so, like Rich, if you want to come see it, you come to my house and we'll share it with you. And and that would be a big thing in helping you understand more about this. I think once you see it and you see it react to you, it changes your whole thought process. And it changes everything and the way you perceive things. And I see it happening all the time.
All right. So that I thought he is like a UFO saint. That guy. I've hung out with him. His just being in his field is very elevating. I mean, I think after hanging out with him for a week and I had this teleportation experience. I did. I'll talk to you about that sometime. But something happened. Something shifted that was just, he's at a vibration, and he's holding that for a lot of people. And he's like John, he's calling in these things all the time at his place. So, that's one piece. I could show the Bashar thing now, which,
let's show Bashar a little bit later. Let's show
Okay.
Bashar a little bit later.
Okay.
I want to get to Dr. Kat, and I want to get to Sylvan.
Yeah.
We'll get to our roundtable discussion. And then definitely we'll show the Bashar video.
Yeah, after the roundtable. Yeah.
After the roundtable. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Dr. Tara. And, one point, just again, from a historical perspective, the big Roswell crash happened in July of 1947. Why Roswell? Well, that's where the 509th Atomic Bomb Squadron was. At the time, only atomic bomb squadron in the world was in Roswell. So obviously there's a tremendous amount of activity. And you've heard a couple times it mentioned that we actually now know that at times our nuclear arms have been turned off. They have let us know, no, you cannot use nuclear weapons. Clearly, the nuclear blasts are what alerted our galactic family to, oh, wow, those crazy humans have reached that level of technology, and their consciousness has to rise. I did one of the last interviews with Timothy Leary before he passed away, and that was his theory. His theory was that the moment we created radiation would set off within our genetic structure an awakening that he thought it would take 3 generations so that our consciousness could catch up with our technology. So I just wanted to add that piece. I also want to invite all the people who are watching on Facebook and on YouTube. We're only about halfway through the show. So come on in and join us. And it's really easy to join the Global Peace Tribe, to get Zoom room links to all of our shows. We do 2 or 3 shows every week. Go to globalpeacetribe.com. You'll learn all about us, about our shows. Click register for the new season. That'll take you to our registration page. It takes about a minute or 2 at the most, and you will immediately get Zoom room links to our shows. And one of the great things about the Global Peace Tribe is we're always bringing in and connecting you, our audience, to the extraordinary other organizations, other people, other groups that are raising consciousness. And so I want to invite 2 friends of mine to share about their organizations, both of which are really important. And then they'll also participate in our roundtable discussion. And I'm going to start by introducing my friend, Dr. Kat Lewis, who's here to tell you all about the International Space Federation. Hi, Kat.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
And I'm going to bring, of course, on your compadre, our beloved Global Peace Triber, Reverend Jeffrey Colebrook.
Yes.
So tell us about the ISF, what it does briefly, and how people can join. And you have screen sharing privilege, so you can go to the website as you wish.
Oh, okay. I think we can start there. Let me grab it. And
Kat, while he's grabbing it, do you want to talk a little bit about the ISF?
Yeah, so the International Space Federation was founded by Nassim Haramein. It's based on Nassim Haramein's work. He's a autodidact physicist, self-taught physicist, which I find is very interesting because it needed to be someone who was self-taught, who was out of the conventional or academia, because academia is based on an understanding that isn't going to get us to where we need to go. So it took an outsider. It had to be someone from the outside to figure it out, because there was a lot of assumptions that were made in physics that was leading us in the wrong direction. But now with his physics, it's beautiful. Everything we've been talking about tonight, he is showing us exactly what this reality is, and that this empty space that we think is empty is the mind of the universe. We live in the mind of the universe, and what we think of as God is the universe, right? It's all the omnis. It's omnipresent, it's omniscient, and it's omnipotent, right? So this empty space is filled with enormous amounts of energy. So in one sugar cube volume of space, it's 10 to the 93 grams of energy. That's enough energy to fuel our globe indefinitely. And so one of the things they're working on is extracting that energy. Now, so there's all this infinite amounts of energy. That's actually a renormalized value. So they took it down to a value that they could actually work with, but it's really infinite, and it's right here. And space is everything, or it's what connects us all. So it's omnipresent. And then all the information that is creating the material world. I put an image in the chat that I drew based on this information, as well as the Vedic science of consciousness. So, Nassim's unified field theory basically explains the Vedic science of consciousness. And the Vedic science of consciousness it's not a philosophy. It literally is a science of consciousness that explains or shows you, using the unexamined logic of your experience, that you are consciousness, and that the universe is a conscious mind. And so, that's this empty space is what unifies us all. So it's omniscient, it's omnipotent, and it contains all the information, and information and energy are one and the same. So when we learn how to cohere with it, when we actually realize that everything in front of us is the mind of the universe, and that we're not separate, that expands our consciousness. That's what does it. That's what raises our vibration. We have to stop thinking that it's something out there. We have to realize it's right in front of us. This universe is the mind of God. It's the mind of the universe.
Yeah, and we're expanding deeply into it. And as we expand, because the universe is expanding, it's all happening together. It's quite amazing. And, it's a wonderful opportunity. This is, I mean, the ISF community has put the science out, written it out in clear mathematical language, open source for the world to have. And that is the science of consciousness. It's the science of 0-point energy.
Everything.
It's the
everything.
science. And it's written, and it's now, talk about disclosure. It's totally disclosed and able for anybody to read, understand the nature from, I mean, this is the holy grail of physics, is the unification of all forces.
It explains all science too. It unifies everything.
We invite you to come join us. You know, it's a great community. You have community connections, engaged in contact with, you get to meet cool people like Kat and myself and many others who have been here. It's a wonderful community.
So they have Jeffrey, just wanted, if I could, we have a large community, and it's essentially, you know, it's $20 a month, and you can meet with the scientists once a month, and you get to ask the most brilliant minds on the planet any question you want, and they'll answer them. They spend, you know, sometimes I think the minimum answer is like 30 minutes long, but they say it in a way that you can get it. And you don't need to be a physicist. You don't need to be a scientist. Really, everyone can be involved, and you can get something out of it. And hearing basically this information really changes your consciousness. It's
definitely. And, you know, by being a member, you're supporting bringing this out too, into, you know, the disclosure of the science is important too. And, you know, it's been as you obviously would know, a challenge getting this in academia, but you know, resistance will be futile, because the beautiful thing about science, when it's correct, it'll penetrate into the oneness. So there you can join as a member, and come hang out with us. We'd love to have you part of it, and then you get all kinds of cool things. So thank you.
So their goal is education. They're also building technology, so free energy technology. They're interested in travel, space travel. They're interested in biotechnology as well. So because, you know, this field is what's generating our physical body. And the more coherence you create with this field, and when you learn how to extract energy from the field, you maximize energy transfer. And energy transfer is information transfer. And it's really decoherence with the field that creates disease in the physical body. So it's really exciting. And, you know, they have it. So I really want people to understand that they have it. And so, you know, I'd be investing in them. This is where I'd be investing my money.
You know, thank you again.
Don't forget the art crystal.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey and Kat. We'll hear more from you a little bit later. For all of you watching on YouTube or Facebook, or just wanting to write it down, go to spacefed.com. Spacefed.com. And again, you can join for $20 a month, and it's a great investment. It's going to give you an opportunity to have a lot of access to wonderful things. And you're also supporting a really important organization. And that's the thing. It's like, let's now move away from mainstream media and the time and energy we were putting into CNN or whatever it may have been, ABC News or Fox News or whatever that was. Put the time and energy into the organizations that you're meeting tonight. And I want to introduce you to another very wonderful organization through our friend Sylvan. And let me find you first, Sylvan, so I can put you up. There you are. Sylvan is the co-founder of the Alliance for Extraterrestrial Diplomatic Contact. He's a futurist and the author of Engineering Paradise. Are you ready? His goal is to build the world's first official United Nations recognized embassy for extraterrestrial civilizations. And again, what a brilliant vision, and how perfect. So I've had the good fortune to work with Sylvan, And Sylvain, tell us a little bit about what you're doing, and I'll take people also to your website.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you all for this and the energy in the room. The Alliance itself has a very simple mandate, and it's something that's very close to my heart and has been for many, many years, is to create the first ET embassy. And you see an example of the mock-up in 3D behind me here. This is a project. The company itself is a Canadian not-for-profit. It's organized in 2021 officially in January, so not that long ago. But it's a project that's actually been carried by the International Iranian movement since 1974. So it's an idea that has occurred a long time ago by a contactee called Rael, who's received messages and a goal of building that embassy in 1973. So the idea comes from a long time ago. And then in 2020, 2021, I suggested to one of the primary members that is carrying that project within the Iranian movement that, this should be a project for everybody. So that's why we created the Alliance. The Alliance is a collective or organization of any denomination, any country, any color, it doesn't matter. All we have in common is that we want the world to be in direct official contact with ETs. Now we know, and many of us here know, that contact has already occurred. Like a lot of people are in contact CE5, direct contact, of a third kind, fourth kind, and so on and so forth through individuals. But our goal here is to make it openly obvious to everybody. So basically, you actually have a building that governments, nation states understand this is where diplomatic missions under the Vienna Convention, so human rules, occur. And media ties come here, have a chat with humanity, kind of process. And because there's a lot of legalities and there's a lot of processes, because we're dealing with 200 nations and they are all positioning themselves to dominate or to gain power and so on, it's complicated. But there are all these international agreements within the United Nations that allow for this to actually occur in an official fashion. Therefore, we're using those mechanisms to have the embassy built. And this year is going to be a fantastic year because we're at a point where we've raised $50 million US for the construction itself over many years and a lot of donations. We have over 30 organizations that are part of the supportive network, a collaboration to make this happen, which represents nearly 2.2 million individuals that want to welcome ETs officially, like in this kind of fashion, openly mediatized and so on. So this year, the next step for us is to organize, and we are organizing a convention. This is a requirement to get some additional documentation associated with the Vienna Convention, which is the main document that establishes rules for diplomats and embassies, to take into account an exterior civilization, something that is outside of the Earth. So we have to have that convention organized. We're organizing it. We've been in contact with national leaders for a few years already for this. So this is happening most likely this year, when we're organizing it. And we are also, as part of the effort of bringing this to the world, because this is really the effort into the mainstream, if you would, we're organizing a streaming service with many, many partners to educate, publish videos, and share and interact as well. And this is going to be announced in February, most likely, so I won't talk about that very much. And we're also preparing a documentary. We're raising funds for it. We're doing crowdsourcing that will tell the story, essentially, using our wonderful partners, Elysium Media, out of Hollywood. And that would also, all of that stuff, as well as how you can contribute and support and help, You can, if you go to our website, you're going to see all that stuff, including the crowdsourcing, the crowdfunding campaign for the documentary.
And
Thank you,
here's the
Scott.
website. It's Alliance and then the number 4 et.org. Alliance, the number 4 et.org. I want to encourage everybody to check it out and see what they're doing, become a member. And of course, we'll be tracking the wonderful work that you and your colleagues are doing. And Sylvain, thank you so much for being with us. I'm going to keep you on camera because we're going to now go into our roundtable conversation. So I'm going to bring back up some of our guests. There's Alan, and here's Carolyn, and here's Dr. Kat, and where is our Dr. Tara? There she is. And here is John Martin. And here's, I think, where's Daniel? Is Daniel back? Is still with us? Where are you? There he is. There's Daniel. All right. All right. So here is our round table conversation. And Alan, do you have an opening?
Yeah, I think, some people do have some very interesting personal experiences that are not necessarily discussed about, but I would think it's important to mention, because Eduardo has some, I know Carolyn has some interesting one. It'd be interesting to just briefly throw that in, and then we can discuss, like through Tara's psychology, the value of experience, because this is where it becomes real. We can philosophize, we can demand truth, but how are people feeling and reacting to this phenomena? That's why John's work is so important, because he is in it. That's like conversation. But Eduardo, are you going to tell us a little bit more about that, and then maybe Carolyn, and then some other people? Then we can.
I'd just like to ask for this.
Yeah.
Because we've got so much to hear. Please don't go into details about the story. Rather, what we want to hear is what Alan pointed to. You had an experience. In one sentence, what the experience was. How has it impacted you? How has it raised your consciousness? How has it changed your life? So if we could structure it that way, please.
Yeah, that's good. So Eduardo, you want to start there?
Yeah, so due to my experience, I decided to test out my sensitivities, because I read about how this could work out. And I was mind blown to see that I could sense, intention, thoughts, and also receive downloads. So one of the churches I went to, I received a download for the first time. It was amazing. I mean, only you have to experience it to understand. It's you receive the whole thing as if it were a story, but it's there's no words. It's just meaning coming through to you. Very powerful.
And how did it change you?
It changed me completely, because first I didn't know how to come out, right? Meaning I had to talk to somebody, and then obviously my wife was very supportive, and thank God for that. And really, I decided to open up at the end to my friends, my closest friends, and it was well received, and it was everybody interprets it a different way. My interpretation and my feeling is that this is something that's within all of us, and there's sort of a tether that connects us to these other dimensions, and it's more than just connection. It's like your life belongs to your consciousness.
Yeah.
Not the other
Thank
way
you.
around.
Thank you. I know you, Carolyn, you were in the mainstream world, corporate, I think, and then boom, here you are bringing in the galactic age. So what happened?
Yeah. Well, I was a punk rocker before and train hopper before I went corporate, and then went back to my roots. But yeah. So I'll just share quickly I'll pick for one experience. I was actually at a Cryon conference with Lee Carroll, if some of you are familiar with him, last summer. And he led a meditation that sort of guided us to view ourselves as the higher self, or I like the term original self. And I just had this experience of sorry, I'm getting the feeling of it now too, of observing the source that I am and actually connecting with that, the source consciousness that is me and that I am an aspect and fractal of, and the energy that flooded my body almost knocked me off my chair. And I just started crying a little bit, which is, many of you probably know, it's almost like this release valve when the frequencies are so high and the energy is so powerful. All your body can really do is just like cry because it's so much love and it's so moving. And how that changed me, this was kind of one of a string of experiences, but it's why I never fear again. It's like, why would I ever worry, or doubt? It's like my life is guided by this infinite intelligence that is always out, quote unquote, ahead of me, orchestrating things. And to know that every desire I have is source desiring a new experience. Every time I love, it's source loving itself. Every time I am in relationship with someone, it's source seeing itself and interacting with itself in a new way. And it brings such richness to my life that there's really no going back.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. That is a great experience to share. I was talking with Tara the other day, and Tara was talking about, in a way, your feelings of your evolution about this change from being, an academic to suddenly being a mystic. And there was something you were saying in that conversation where you just felt like you were opening up in a sort of vulnerable way about where you're putting yourself now in your adventure in the world. Do you remember that, Tara?
I did. We covered a lot of ground. So to summarize it here, what I'll say is that when I was really mired in this 3D-ness as an academic and fear, my life at that point was really driven by compulsion to meet certain ideals, 3D ideals. And through developing this method for what I now call raising consciousness, but at the time I just wanted to be a better person, actually. I started rewiring the programming of my mind towards higher consciousness in meditations as an agnostic atheist academic, and quite suddenly started having these very mystical experiences that coincided with experiences like the ones that have been shared here by other folks, as well as UFOs showing up outside of my house. And that was quite unexpected. And so for me, in my experience, my N of one, my sample size of one experience, the raising of consciousness is inextricably tied with the phenomena. Once we expand our field, once we expand into the field, it's clear that our consciousness is connected to the collective, and that's the entire collective. That includes ETs, that includes interdimensionals, ultradimensionals, ultra-terrestrials. I don't even know all the terms. I don't even know what they really mean, but I know that I've experienced some wild stuff in the field when my consciousness has been expanded. And so for folks in my academic world or in my personal life who have seen my interests transform rather radically from, counting breaths and mindfulness activities to like, who knows what it is I'm doing now. There's this confusion about why I've become so intensely interested in ETs. And without having those experiences at higher states of consciousness, I think that it's just so hard for folks to grok that the collective again is that entire collective. And when you experience the collective, it's everyone, not just, humans on planet Earth, right? It's mushrooms, it's plants, it's animals, it's again, all of these other beings. And so it's been quite amazing and expansive to say the least.
Wow. Thank you. I just want to go to Daniel because Daniel, I'm still also having a little problem with the bridge. There's the ETs and then there's the evolution of consciousness. And for me to make the connection is like, are they telling us they're here so we can raise our consciousness to meet them? Is that the bridge here? I mean, what do you think?
I think so. First of all, I decided to copy your idea and post my book over here.
Yeah, you should. Yeah.
And I'm also an astrophotographer, so this is one of my pictures.
Nice.
Yeah. I think so. Sorry.
But no, make the bridge because I'm still having I mean, Tara sort of did it, but I'm still having a little problem connecting ETs to this evolution of consciousness, unless it is the same thing.
Yeah, I think we all, so regardless of the ET, humanity, we are much more connected than we actually believe, or we can actually give credit to. We don't give enough credit to ourselves, I think, because there's so much synchronicities, so much going on, so many other types of communications, the telepathy tapes are a great example of things that are going on, and we had no clue. As a neuroscience or prior neuroscientist, I think it's pretty much inexcusable that science has missed that kind of phenomenon. And the reason it has missed it, even though it was hidden in plain sight, is because there's so much we are so constrained our thought, what we allow ourselves to think and believe. And I personally don't think we should believe anything. We should explore. We should be much more like explorers than believers. But we don't allow ourselves to explore that much. There's always so many rules and so many constraints to how and when and what we can explore. And I think we have that. If we are paying more attention, we'll have already realized that consciousness is probably more fundamental than matter, regardless of any ET. And I think that's the bridge you're asking me about. And that's the example I like to give, and that's the example I use in the book, is pain. Everybody has felt pain. Nobody questions the existence of pain. Nevertheless, pain is a paranormal phenomenon. Pain is not a phenomenon that can be proven to exist scientifically. We just don't question it. That's I think that's the realization we are missing. Most people are missing. We don't question certain phenomena and we take them for granted as real, like pain, just because everybody feels it. So because everybody feels pain, we put that in the real box. But then some other phenomena, they are not as prevalent, or it's only a few people have it. And because it's not a consensus phenomenon, we put them in another box, like a paranormal box. But all of it is paranormal. It really is. We don't have scientific proof for the existence of pain. We have proof for the existence of electrical signals in neurons. But then how and why, and that translates into a phenomenon called pain, we don't have the slightest clue of how that happens. But then we start pretending and fooling ourselves by telling ourselves that we do how pain happens. We insist in telling ourselves that we know how it works, but we really don't. Ask any scientist to build a machine that feels pain, and they won't know how to do it, because the basis of the phenomenon are completely non-available. We don't know how pain happens.
So that's true of all sensation, then you're saying, whatever we don't know.
It is true of all conscious experience.
Right. And so when we have these experiences that are not in the 3D, that are at these higher states of consciousness, scientists who measure objective reality, who are not at that higher state, I think they actually can't perceive, they actually can't see those phenomena. So you have amazing scientists out there like Dean Radin doing amazing objective research on what we call paranormal phenomena, but mainstream science rejecting it, even though the studies are extremely well designed and well executed. So I think that Daniel's point about perception here is a really poignant one. Thank you, Daniel, for that.
But do you think, though, just like a general question, Tara and everybody, that, we've had the human experience, we've had pain, we've had all this, and what the ET phenomena is calling us to is another level of awareness. Somehow it's beyond the physical, but it's still, it's an evolution, I feel, that we're being called to. Does that make sense?
Collective species, right? Essentially, we talked about the collective consciousness and being able to tap into it in these one-off experiences, but moving more towards a species that's tapped into the collective more regularly. It's pretty interesting, and that meaning that we can interface with other beings that communicate in those ways.
I don't know exactly what we call ET, because the phenomenon has been around in many shapes and ways for forever, right? All everything that is kind of paranormal, all of these entities, angels, and everything that we don't understand, they could be ETs, or either it's all ETs and we don't, but then we need a better definition for ET, or ET is a subgroup of a bigger collection of entities, right? But then I think that what's the thing here is that what we call ET are those metaphysical creatures that happen to be able to manifest in 3D in a way that is quite material, like with craft and things like that.
Well, I don't know. Scott, were you going to say something? I just want to say...
what I'd like to do is, we've gone a long time without having any music. So Fanny and Vigari, get ready. We're going to go to you in a moment so we can digest all this. But I want to go to Dr. Kat, because she also had a life-changing experience. And I think it's, again, since we're kind of sharing our experiences, how it shifted our consciousness, Dr. Kat has a wonderful story to tell. And then we're going to go to Fanny and Vigari for a little music.
So in 2018, I had an experience where my whole body turned into light. And I had a spontaneous healing. I had Hashimoto's, it was gone like that. I had a shoulder injury where I couldn't barely move my arm, barely do anything with it, and it completely was gone. Everything in my body felt like light. I was like, it was like taking a Raggedy Ann doll and just shaking her. Like there was no resistance in my body whatsoever. It felt like every single part of me was white light. And it was spontaneous. I wasn't doing anything. It just happened spontaneously. At first, right before it happened, I felt completely weightless and at one with the space around me. So I looked at my arms, but they felt no different than this empty space. And it was like I was the room that I was in. I was the field. I was everything in the room. The room was occurring inside of me, just like a dream occurs inside of you at night when you sleep. But I knew myself as a space. I felt it. I was completely weightless. And then I won't go into the details, but then all of a sudden I felt this rush of what I call liquid electric energy, and it just shot right through me, and then everything became light, and I was jumping up and down, and it was pure ecstatic bliss. And after that, I was like, how did that happen? And how did I see that the room I was in was inside of me? And and actually it also looked like light suspended in space. So all the material objects and even this empty space looked like light suspended in space. And so I was, after this happened, well, by the end of that night, my brain was buzzing, just front to back. The energy was just going like this, bzzz, and I couldn't sleep. The person I was with, no psychedelics, nothing was involved. I mean, people always ask me what I was doing before that. I mean, I was just going to lay down next to my daughter and read a book. But, I had been doing a lot of Kundalini yoga. I had been investigating the nature of reality, understanding what this reality is. I was studying the Vedic science of consciousness, which really helps you understand who you are as pure consciousness and not the physical body. And so I think all of that contributed, but I don't know, because I know a lot of people who've had somewhat similar experiences that weren't doing anything at all. So who knows why we set these things up for ourselves. But anyway, I wanted to understand that. And so that's what set me on the journey of figuring that out. And then eventually I came to Nassim's work, and that really helped me understand that everything is light, that we're all made out of light. Yeah, and really it's our level of consciousness that determines how we experience reality. So as we start to understand ourselves as this unbounded field of awareness and start, it's not this intellectual exercise. Like, yes, you need the intellect, you need the information, but you also need the experience. You need to practice it. And so I was, after the experience, I would practice like staying as that unbounded awareness. Now, what that did, that after that experience, my brain was buzzing all night long. It felt very spacious inside, and still does now. I can feel waves of energy floating through my brain. I can feel it floating through my body. I can feel waves of energy out here. The universe became alive. Everything was bouncing. I used to tell my friends that it's like I'm on a boat dock, or I'm in the water, I'm in the ocean, but there's no water. There's just waves of energy, and that's what it feels like. So as we raise our level of consciousness and we start to understand what this reality is, we will experience that more and more. And the world will be more malleable. It'll be more malleable. And when we really start, when you know yourself as consciousness, right, you are centered and you are in the present moment, and your inner senses become alive. They turn on, because you're in the present moment and you're sensing and feeling. And it's when we place our attention on this field that it becomes alive. And you start feeling energy move in your body. You can feel the torus come, the vortex coming in and going out of the body. You can feel that black hole dynamics, because everything is black hole. So it's pretty amazing.
I want to encourage people. Dr. Kat has a lot that she offers. She offers spiritual heart meditations on Sunday mornings. So you can find all things Dr. Kat by going to drkatlewis.com. That's DRKAT. She spells it Kat, K-A-T, Lewis, LEWIS.com. And she's got a YouTube channel and a TikTok channel. And she's one of my favorite presenters. So thank you, Dr. Kat, for being with us. And stick around. We're going to continue some conversation. And I think it's about the longest we've gone in a long time, having some music. And there's a lot to integrate. And I'm so grateful for all these amazing presenters. And I'm also grateful for the Mystiques. You also know them as Fanny and Vigari. I love these two beings. And thank you for being with us tonight. Is there anything you'd like to say or share before you play?
Thank you, Scott. Well, Fanny has had a bit of an experience, I think, lately.
Yes, when I was a little girl. So now I've grown up, and I'm so glad to hear there's more of all of us. And Dr. Kat, I really vibe with everything you said. It was such a wonderful evening to listen to all these speakers. And a little story, a few years ago, I met these young kids in their 20s, 25, with very, very amazing parents, very awakened parents. So these kids are over the top studying and manifesting things. And around a fire one night, the kids were talking about when they go in nature, they see the balls coming to them, and they get the download of all sorts of extraordinary gifts of and then they go and they write it in their book, and then they have these new amazing thing that can save the planet and that can clean the ocean, and I said, oh my God, I want to hang out with you guys. I really like these kids. They were really already there. So I think that the more we awaken, the more we get in touch with the star beings, and so it is.
Yes, we venture expectantly on the pathways to alternate realities, opening up the doorways to true communication with our brothers and our sisters from across the galaxy. As we graduate to the higher frequencies of oneness with all beings, the stage is set for long-anticipated interaction and cooperation with our interdimensional neighbors.
Plentiful, plenty bright. Lights up the sky tonight. Slightly bigger, slightly brighter. He lights up the pathways. Just look up in the sky. He rises in the east, climbs highest around midnight. Oh my, sky watchers, enjoy this spectacular. Starships in the night, starships above the earth.
Oh, I'm going to go to gallery view. Let's all just twinkle. I'm seeing so many comments in the chat box about how powerful this is. And we just love you guys so much. And you can get more of Fanny and Vigari, also known as the Mystiques, by going to themystiques1111.bandcamp.com. themystiques1111.bandcamp.com. And I highly recommend Awaken 1111. That's the album I listened to. Fanny and Vigari, thank you so much for being with us. We're going to close our show at the very end of the show, which will happen sometime in the next week or so. We still have 32 more presenters. No, kidding.
Lord,
no, not
we are
quite.
so blessed.
Well, thank you so much, Scott. It's an honor for us to be among such wonderful company.
Yes.
Thank you. And I want to acknowledge all the people watching, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, or of course, our beloveds that are in the Zoom room. Everybody here is playing a role in raising consciousness. Ellen and I happen to be the ones that host the shows, and we're blessed because we get to every day be talking to extraordinary people that are doing extraordinary things. So thank you, Fanny, Vigari, the Mystiques. And we will see you at the end of the show. Alan, do you want to show that Bashar video? That might be a good next step.
Yeah, I'll show the short version, and then we'll discuss that. And I think a little more discussion among the people is what will gel it all together. But so I just want to give everything we said about consciousness a context in terms of what Bashar, who claims to be this extraterrestrial from the future, has been talking about, and now it's reached another level. So this is Bashar recently in Sedona. No, that's not. Is this? Do you see that on your screen there, Scott?
Yes. Yeah, I sure do.
Okay, here we go. This is Bashar. I guess it's almost full screen, but here we go.
This is the beginning of the next phase of open contact for your planet. We are going to talk about the idea of what you can do to accelerate this for your own experience. We are going to talk about the idea of what it means for your planet to experience the beginning stages of contact. There are literally thousands upon thousands upon thousands of beings involved in these transmissions. Thousands upon thousands of beings involved in different things going on your planet, watching, observing, and in many ways, participating. Our participation is about to become more physical. You will see over the course of the next few years increases in what you call UFO sightings, UAP sightings, to get you used to the idea that there is a lot of traffic around your planet. There are a lot of portals through which many ships pass, many beings come and go. As you increase your vibration, as you broaden your bandwidth, so to speak, by acting on your passion, raising your frequency, becoming a better receiver, a better antenna of higher frequency information and experience, then your senses can extend to the point where you can begin to see many of the things that were heretofore invisible to you, that have been around you all the time. And this not only includes the idea of extraterrestrial spacecraft, but also the idea of spirit beings, because everything is here and now, right here, right now, all overlapping, separated only by the concept of different frequencies. So when you extend your bandwidth, you start including within your consciousness the ability to perceive more of those frequencies. This not only has the effect of suddenly perceiving things that were heretofore invisible to your senses, but also allowing you to start experiencing an increase in other phenomena, such as positive synchronicity, things like precognition, psychic prediction, deja vu, and so on and so forth. Because as you broaden your bandwidth, you are extending from the physical into the non-physical, where you have laid out your life path as a blueprint, non-physically, before you chose the experience of incarnation. Parallel realities are there for you to tap into as you broaden your bandwidth and allow your senses to become sharper on picking up on all the different things that are going on multiple realities in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Don't be too shocked and too surprised when you start perceiving other beings that others may say are not there. As you see an increase in spirit shapes, in causal plane geometrics, in energy streams, in UFOs, in interdimensional beings, in angelic energies, so on and so forth. You have arrived at the place now where you have been preparing and preparing and preparing. And now it starts to, as you say, pay off. The vibration of the new cycle is increasing. The waves are coming faster and faster. And as you raise your vibration, you will catch up to those waves and be pushed along, pulled along, riding those waves toward the experience of open contact, not only with extraterrestrials, but with other beings, other spirits, and of course, as always, more of yourself. Because that's what this is all about, becoming more of who you truly are.
Well, that is a great kind of summation of a lot of points that we've been talking about here today.
I think, Alan, he gave you the answer you asked me.
What was that?
I was also, I thought that what Kat said was very insightful. I mean, what we understand as reality is a projection, is not a true reality. When he says things like our participation will become more physical, he's kind of saying that we will venture in your world so you can see us, but that's not really where we live and dwell. So the idea, what we call ET, are spiritual beings, consciousness beings, or beings who have mastered this technology, consciousness technology, or beings who understand what base reality really is. They live in a more profound reality, and they venture into our reality so we can see them. But some of these beings are more able to manifest physically than others, because others it's a vibration, like he says, vibration.
Right.
The frequency is different. But I think what is important here is to shift our mindset and stop thinking of this as reality and think of these 3D as a projection. So what's happening, that ET is those beings that are manifesting and helping us realize that we are a projection of our deeper reality.
Right. Do you get that too, Carolyn? Is that what you're getting in your contact?
Yeah, exactly. We haven't gone anywhere. It's like we've cast our consciousness out into a band of frequency to have the perception of being human, just like someone maybe having the perception of being an extraterrestrial or being an inner earth being. And it's like I really resonated too with what Bashar was saying, and think of, it's like all of these realities or experiences or moments, however you want to thinking about it, are happening all at once and occupying essentially the same quote unquote space. So it's not so much that it's like we're perceiving our way into something that's already there. It's like I can guarantee each one of us sitting in our rooms, we're probably surrounded by beings who are so curious and interested in this conversation right now and here. And it's just, you know, quieting our mind, opening our heart, as he said, expanding the bandwidth so that we can just perceive what's already all around us, like the light spectrum, you know?
Wow. Yeah.
Dr. Cat, did you have something you wanted to say?
as well?
What's that?
I was asking Dr. Cat. I think she started to say something.
Oh, Cat.
No, I was agreeing with Carolyn. I was laughing at they are here.
I
It's
was hoping to make a point if I could.
Yes, please.
Who's that? You know, it kind of ties your earlier question in with what Bashar was saying. There was a day I was walking to the park and this portal opened up and this being came through it. And on earlier broadcast, I've presented those pictures, and I was able to get a few photographs of it, but I turned away from this higher dimensional being because my mind and my spirit was not quite ready for that experience. And I thought about it during the whole day. And that night, this golden energy came down to treetop level, and I apologized. I said, I'm really sorry I didn't give that beautiful entity the time it deserved. And that golden energy expanded many times, understanding that this is, you know, it's a challenge for us, and it's, you know, it stretches our sense of reality. And I think there's a galactic imperative when we present ourselves in a pure way and a loving way, and we present the best of ourselves. There's a galactic imperative for them. As Dr. Katz said, they turn into their light bodies and they come into our dimension for a short time, and we interact in that way. And I think that's what Bashar was saying is when you're open to the experience, and when you just embrace it, there's nothing to fear. It's a beautiful experience. The energy they send to you is so beautiful and so loving, and it will absolutely change this world. And I just hope we all can do that. If we can try, if I make it a daily practice to do that. Just like guitar, I've been playing guitar for 50 years. I've been doing this work for 15 years. And I'm as dedicated to that as I am to anything I've ever done.
Thank you, John. How about
really
you?
Important point that he's making. Give me a second, Helen.
Yeah.
Because again, John is letting us know, cultivate your relationship, right? Any relationship that we have, we need to cultivate. Now, we all know what it's like cultivating a romantic relationship, and we know what it's like cultivating relationships with our dogs, our cats, our pets, but also cultivating our relationship to that which is multidimensional. And I appreciated John's both how he cultivates, but also the very human part of when something big happened and he got a little bit scared, a little bit like, oh, whoa, maybe I can't handle that. And I'm going to bring up one of our favorite Global Peace Tribers, Tiara, only because Tiara, I noticed you had a big response to what John shared, and I'm curious what that response was.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that, John, and everyone tonight. This has been more than I could have imagined as an activation and a confirmation. The reaction in that aspect was when my mom was getting ready to pass. My dad, who had already crossed over, came into the room, and I felt him coming toward me to hug me, to comfort me as I was getting ready to be with my mom through her experience. And he got so close, and then my human nature took over, and I didn't know what it was going to feel like to have him embrace me ethereally. And I had felt bad about not allowing that. So you helped heal that for me, John. And Alan, you had mentioned earlier, you asked, you know, is this the transcendence? Is this the connection? And I chatted to Scott. I said, yes, we are the world bridgers. That's who we are. And in this conversation, we've transcended from, you know, what is it, you know, to who are we? And, the music is such a big part of that. The music's the universal language. And I'm so honored to be here. I'm so grateful to have had this safe space tonight to share so much in the chat. And, this is, what we're teaching the children and creating a space for them to have conversations like this too.
Thank you, Diara. Thank you so much for being with us and representing all the amazing stuff going on in the chat box. Alan?
I'm just getting stuff from tonight's show I didn't expect to get, I'm just like making that bridge myself from like the vibrational. I mean, I knew it was there and I had like foot in the spiritual world and one in this ET, but then it's like I'm getting the connection. That's why I want to talk to Eduardo, because Eduardo, you came from this whole other world, computer. This was not a thought in your head. And now here you are with a bunch of us. And so what's going on for you?
Yeah, I think it talks about how you react to the world and the world reacts to you. It's the same thing with ETs. They allow you to communicate with them through this language. It's a language, right? The spirituality, the high vibrations, it's a way to communicate. It's a way for you to penetrate their world and the same way they penetrate ours. Now, I remember Gary Nolan saying that there's a speciation moment in humanity where we will evolve into something else. And some of us will make that jump. And most of us hopefully will make that jump. And that elevation is what makes it possible for you to look at so I'll tell you a story about my daughter. My daughter is a doctor. She's a non-believer. I've talked to her 100,000 times and she still doesn't believe it until she saw one in New Year with me as I was on the beach celebrating New Year this past New Year, right? And now she's starting to believe. So that, I think there's a language going on here. It's trying to communicate to us that we have something that they want and admire perhaps, and vice versa, right?
Right. Margaret Mead, the anthropologist, says that when you ask about UFOs, that's not the right question. It's not about belief. This is not a religious thing. Either you've had an experience or you open to it, but it's a knowing or it's not. I mean, I think belief.
You're right. Yeah.
That's what I feel. I mean, so yeah, people are always asking, do you believe in UFOs? Well, have you had the experience or do you suspect it? But
right, it's a knowing.
When you've had these experiences, we can no longer afford to doubt ourselves. That's what I'm realizing here, and the world is not where we're at. I mean, they may think we're all crazy on this show, but we're lifting or attempting to lift the field, not just for us, but for everyone. John's music, just listen to that. He's lifting the field there for what's possible. And it's proof he's calling those ships in as he's singing to them. So that's what I'm getting. Carolyn, were you going to say something there and jump in? Oh, you did? Okay. But if you want to, wait, Scott, you said you had someone else you wanted to go to here. Yes. You said in my chat, let's go to.
That was a while back. I'd already done that.
I'll share something.
Yes.
Go for it.
Okay. So do you see that image I had put in the chat?
Do you want to pull it up so we can all see it? You've got screen sharing privilege, Kat.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Well, hold on. I'll just put it in the chat. It'll be easier because I can't. Let's see. So I just want to address the idea that, we really don't have anything to fear except for fear itself. So this, our best science, and as well as the Vedic science of consciousness, is showing that this is the structure of reality, essentially. It's this unified field that is the container of everything, and it's creating the material world and us as sentient beings. So when we expand our awareness of what reality is, or when we open our minds, we just open ourselves up into more of ourselves. We are this field.
I've pulled the
yeah, I
image
see.
up, right?
Yeah. So I mean, we are, so that unified field is right here. It's creating the physical body. It's creating us as sentient beings. And so when we open our awareness, when you sense and feel the space around you, you're just opening up into that. You're opening up into more of yourself. You are this. So there's really nothing to fear. Now, humanity, this is the information that humanity has been missing for thousands of years, right? It's really what Jesus was trying to share with us, and other masters like him. And we weren't getting it. And so this piece, and so when we don't understand this, when we don't understand that this field is here, it's filled with energy, and energy is information, and it's what connects us all, then what we do is we close ourselves off to it. So we literally shut it. We don't allow it to come through us. We don't allow ourselves to experience it, but it's here. And the more we start to realize that, the more we'll be able to access it. You literally will feel the universe become alive, but there really is nothing to fear. What we're seeing is, because this information has not been understood, we are seeing the effects, the consequences of separation consciousness. When we don't understand reality, when we don't know what this field is, that's when we war. We create war inside ourselves, and we create war outside ourselves. And so we're getting a giant lesson on separation consciousness, but it's not a bad thing. It's, if we're eternal beings, if you look at that, right? So if that light is beyond space-time, it's what's projecting space-time. So that's how we are eternal. We just need to bring our level of awareness down to the field, and it's all around you. So what you do is drop into the heart and expand, start sensing and feeling the space around you, and it will become more alive to you.
So, are you saying then this whole discussion, in a sense, I'm just asking kind of rhetorically, it's not about ETs, it's about unifying, moving to the vibration of the field, so we raise ourselves up so we can meet these other beings on the place where they live, instead of
and I believe that's what Bashar, I watched his Echoes of Sedona event, which was in November. And I believe that, what he said, they looked at our reaction to what had happened, to the September event, where they made a comment about the election, right? So they made a comment about the election, and then they watched how we behaved, right? So, and he said from that, they pushed open contact out, right? So they made it longer.
Oh.
Right. And so and then he said some other things, but the conclusion that I came away with is we're not where we need to be. And I've also heard him in another event say that we need to stop looking at them as like our saviors. We have to be on equal ground with them. And the more we bring our awareness, the more we start to understand ourselves as that light, as this field, your confidence will increase, the knowledge that you have will increase, because that energy is information. You'll start knowing things and understanding things differently. It changes your perspective. So you'll know things you didn't read in a book. You'll understand reality differently, and that gives you so much confidence. And so then we'll be on equal ground with them.
Thank you so much, Kat. Ellen, I want to, if I may,
sure.
I want to spotlight a few important other resources.
Yes.
Because there are some really important resources. And one is someone who's been on this show many times, Kalina. And I'll put in the chat box, but Kalina did once a year, she does a big 2-hour presentation, kind of her vision for the year. And I listened to it in its entirety a few days ago. And one of the things she said, and she's a clear channel, and I'm I'm a snob about channels because I've been around it for so long. So I'm pretty discerning over psychics and channels. And she's right there with Bashar in my estimation in terms of clarity. And she also got 2026 is when there will be open contact. And her entire presentation is really fascinating. So I'm putting into the chat box where you can find it. It's free, it's on YouTube, and I highly recommend it. I also want to direct people to a couple of books from the people you've heard from tonight. And the first one is the book from our beloved John Martin. And here it is, The Universe Loves You. You can find it on Amazon. Just go to Amazon and put in John Martin, Universe Loves You. It comes right up. Whitley Strieber does the foreword. Incidentally, Whitley will be on our show and to be on in a few weeks. So you'll be seeing Whitley Strieber in a few weeks. He's got a brand new book out called The Fourth Mind. And then I also thank you to Omashar, who found the book from our new friend, Daniel. And so I'm going to bring that up right here. Here we go. And thank you very much for finding that. So Daniel's book also can be found on Amazon, and it's called Spira Duality, S-P-I-R-I. But before you get to the spirit part, it's like Spira and duality put together. Spira Duality, spiritual initiation for rational people. So I love that title. And what an important book. So again, you can get that on Amazon. So just wanted to really point out those three very valuable resources. And now I'll go back to you, Ellen, for whatever you want.
I just want to say, should I show one more piece of the Bashar clip, or do you want to continue the discussion? Or do you want to wrap up, Scott?
I think we're getting close to wrap up time, but I'd like to open it up to any of our presenters to share their kind of last final thoughts. So in no particular order, just go ahead and raise your hand. Use the hand raise like that so I can find you easily. And, I'd love to have each of our presenters give a final thought, and then we will go to some music. Dr.
I was just, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So one thing that I see a lot of people do is they see someone on stage and they think that person knows, but I don't. Right. So it's like they idolize other people and they think that they're not masters, but everyone here is really a master. And you just need to investigate reality more, go deep within and start asking questions. And so I just don't want you to be inhibited by thinking that you don't have it and somebody else does, because I see that a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Kat. That's a really important point. Thank you. Carolyn.
Wait, you're muted.
Sorry about that. So we mentioned the telepathy tapes a couple times tonight, and I wanted to mention it one more time because especially the last episode where they actually go to these nonverbal autistic kids who are practicing telepathy, who are spending a lot of time in the field, and ask them sort of what do you want to share with humanity? And you get this pretty profound higher dimensional wisdom coming through that I think a lot of us would recognize and resonate with. One of the things that stuck with me, it's a simple thing to say, but it's actually just I wrote it on my fridge just so I look at it every morning and many times a day. But one of the boys in on the podcast, he just said, "Make your whole life about love." And it was just such a beautiful sentiment. And I think it really ties together a lot of what we've been talking about, because that is sort of the vehicle and also the reward of higher consciousness is feeling that love, expressing that love, being that love. And really that is the state of allowing. If you want to start talking about manifestation too, it's like that is what that's the highest frequency there is, you know, and how you can really start having just the most amazing, beautiful life, including these, you know, contact and other more like mystical experiences, is just to be in the frequency of love as much as we possibly can.
Thank you. Beautiful. Thanks
Carolyn,
for
it's been
being here,
wonderful
Carolyn.
meeting you and having you on the Awakening World. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I'm really impressed.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. And you'll come back. You know, we'll do an interview, but there's lots of opportunities for your knowledge and your experience. So thank you, Carolyn. Okay.
Eduardo, is there any closing thoughts you'd like to share?
The one thing that I wanted to share is that don't let your fear get the best of you. Fear is lowers your vibes. Put your fear in check. And as Daniel was saying, pain is something that the mind creates. So, and fear is part of that pain. So put your pain in check. I got cured from an acute symptom I had. I couldn't get out of bed by basically believing that I could get the pain away. And it went away. It went away within a day. It's fear and pain are things we don't need to live with. We need to live with love. I think Carolyn's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eduardo. And likewise, it's been wonderful to have you join us. And I'll also put the spotlight on you, Daniel, for whatever your final thoughts might be for tonight. Love to have you all come back.
I think there is an important thought to build on what Kat and Eduardo and others said. One of the reasons I call this book Spirit Duality is because there is a duality in us that is, we are both creators and creation. And this is super important because we are used to see ourselves as creation, like a powerless in a sense. We just showed up and we don't know exactly where it came from. We just showed up in this world as a creation. Something or someone put us here. But the creation, the creation is our 3D, is the 3D part of us. There is a creator. We are all creators. And there is a creator beyond 3D that is creating this image, this 3D representation of ourselves here. And the more we see ourselves as creator, the easier it gets to connect with this other reality, with the ETs and all of that, because they are all in that other space, in that other plane. They see themselves as creators. And we are in the process of transitioning our understanding from creation to creator. Because everything that exists, that you look around, like these computers we are all using, the buildings where we are, everything is started in consciousness. Everything started as an idea. So consciousness is the source of everything that exists, including the whole universe, because it comes from a higher source, a higher creator. But everything that we create starts in consciousness, and that's the real deal. The creational aspect of us is not that important, but we tend to see that as the real deal. So the more we see ourselves as creators and the less we see ourselves as creation, the easier it gets. That'll be my final thought.
Thanks, Daniel, for being here. Great to see you. Look forward to meeting you soon in San Diego. And your book is very interesting from a science point of view. You've bridged into consciousness. I mean, you've done it both, the neurology and the spirituality. So thanks.
Okay, we are in the home stretch. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to Bashar for a song. Then we've got some more announcements, and I want to share some of the highlights that I've seen in the chat going on, and any final comments if any of our presenters want to make. And then, of course, our very, very, very last thing will be Fanny and Vigari music. But our beloved house musical artist, has another song specially prepared for tonight. And now you all can get up and move and groove and dance if you wish. Take it away, Bashar.
Now we recognize we've been hypnotized. The spell is wearing off, and so now we rise with higher frequencies. There is no disguise. The truth of life itself is now realized. Love is reaching through hearts of me and you. Our world is waking up to our different points of view, as now we recognize we've been hypnotized. The spell is wearing off, and so now we rise with higher frequencies. There is no disguise. Life itself is now realized. Ba-da-da-da. So shake yourself free of the past. No longer do we walk in the dark. Let's show each other what we can do, and let our light shine right on through. And let the good of humanity stay, and let the dross simply fade away. And let the mother return to us all, so that love can have her way. Cause now we recognize we've been hypnotized. The spell is wearing off, and so now we rise with higher frequencies. There is no disguise. The truth of life itself is now realized. Ba-da-da-da. So shake yourself free of the past. No longer do we walk in the dark.
I'm muted. Amazing. That is the perfect song for what we've been talking about tonight. Absolutely, Bashar.
It's such a high vibe song. When I sing it, I almost get out of my body. It's like, whoa.
And then it ends abruptly, and I'm like, up.
Yeah, no, I could tone it down. I'm not too sure how to fade it out. But they're always a work in progress, because every time I play something, it goes, well, it needs to be a bit more. What is it? Leonardo? Who's the guy that did the David in the statue? It keeps on.
Michelangelo.
Michelangelo.
Thank you. You know, I keep on chipping off the stone and revealing its perfection. So thank you.
Well, there are 5 perfections that he has completed, 5 stones that have been chipped perfectly, and these are his 5 CDs. And you can get his music by going to omashar.bandcamp.com, omashar.bandcamp.com. And I want to turn it over to my wonderful co-host, Alan Steinfeld, who provides so much through New Realities. His YouTube channel is amazing. And so, Alan, share with our audience, how do people get more of you, and what do you want to highlight tonight?
Well, I'm going to have to rewrite my book, I think, about making contact, first of all, because it is the contact within we're making. And, you know, just to wrap up what I've got from this whole evening is that, you know, there's always been love, people always having, yes, loving thought. I think the planet is at a new vibration where the love emanation actually bridges us into this other realm. Maybe it has done that for the higher avatars, but collectively, somehow it's coming together where, as a planetary civilization, we are raising the frequency. So these beings that are out there don't have to come down to our level, but we can go up to their level. You know, one of the things I talk about in my discussions with about my book is, if we really want to make contact with them, we have to speak and be at the level that they're at, and the level of consciousness as they're at, so we can have this, going back to telepathy, this exchange. And we don't bark at our dogs when we want to communicate with them, right? We want to talk to them at the higher levels, not that they're not high, that we're at. So these beings are asking us in this collective way to raise to the frequency where we can, like SteveBassett said about, 4 or 5 hours ago, to develop this telepathic essence that is at the center of us. It is who we're born with gnosis, and it's been educated out of us. And now I think we're returning back to take civilization to a new place and become the new beings. Someone mentioned the new beings, and it feels like we're at that moment with the drones and everything that's coming this way, to be a new species, to be a new collective. And I think we did something here tonight, Scott, was bring everyone into a collective field. Maybe you do that on all your shows, but there felt like there was this fabric that was woven through everyone who's been here for the last couple of hours. So that's sort of what I want to say. And I'm doing a retreat, actually, to talk about some of this in Sedona. Doing this Making Contact retreat with my good friend. Oh, you see that? Do you see that on your screen there? Making Contact. Me and Hope Fitzgerald are doing this in April 30th to May 4th in Ground Zero for Making Contact, Sedona, Arizona. We're going to actually develop this collective consciousness and bring in these beings and make contact on the sacred land there. It's sacred because the vibration of the red rocks creates a magnetic frequency. So we're going to be there. Join me, Hope Fitzgerald, who's been on this show. Go to spreadinfinitehope.com/Sedona, and it'd be really fun to have a live experience of all this and see where we connect. So that's spreadinfinitehope/Sedona. And what else?
Your website, Alan, tell people about New Realities, because I'm just always blown away with, how amazing your website is.
Well, I have almost 90,000 subscribers. I was one of the first YouTube creators because I had a public access show for many years, and then I had this opportunity to upload them even before Google bought them. So since 2006, I've had archives of some of our favorite people in the field: Linda Moulton Howe, Anita Moorjani, Deepak Chopra. I've interviewed Deepak like 20 times. So that's That's youtube.com/new realities, where I do an overview of all the thought leaders that have influenced me and the world to bring us all to this next level. I mean, in a way, they're all talking about the same thing. We're all talking about increasing our vibration to reach this level of collective love. So that's what I knew I was doing something, and now I know that's what I'm doing. So, I mean,
and tell people about the book for anybody who doesn't have it yet. And it can be, you can get it on Amazon. Just put in Alan Steinfeld, Making Contact. But tell us about
yes, I'll put that in the chat too. And the book is a collection of essays by people I feel are the best in the field, who's devoted their lives to this phenomena. And what we're all doing here and what they're doing is breaking down this rigid wall of humanity, and to tell people there's something more. We are something more. There's more to us than what we've been told. And when I'm also teaching a remote viewing course that shows us the infinite field. It shows us how this course I'm teaching in remote viewing gives us an insight into how we tap into this infinite mind. So yeah, we have this expanded heart. How does the consciousness transcend time and space? So when we know we're not locked into time and space, we have a chance to feel the essence that we really are. So I'm doing this course with Kelly Fisher, who's an incredible psychic who I met through Tara, and we're combining forces to show people their infinite nature and that they have an infinite mind. Yes, we have this infinite heart to love, and we have this infinite mind to transcend all the limitations that we've been told we were locked into. So I'm really excited about that too. I'll put that link in the chat. So Scott, this has been a very uplifting show for me. I usually get tired after 3 or 4 hours, but I have a lot of energy here tonight to just keep going. And thanks for creating an opportunity to celebrate our beingness with our friends. And thanks, John Martin, for being here, all the musicians, all the people we brought in from the Consciousness Club that we're part of. And Tara DiLiberto had to sign off, but she gives her love. And let's do it again. Let's keep making contact, me and you, Scott.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Alan. Alan, you'll of course be with me when we have Whitley Strieber on.
Yes. I have to say, Whitley is the most experienced contactee probably in the world. He understands this phenomena better than anyone else that I've met having experiences. So, yeah. And he's written a new book called
Fourth Mind.
The Fourth Mind, yes. And I think that's what we've sort of demonstrated here today, that there is this other level of mind that we're all a part of. Everyone here watching is a part of it. I mean, there's something magical happening on planet Earth, and we're part of it. And the drones are just a clue to what's more, that there's this world that we're not the freaks of the universe. You know, life is not just an accident of nature. We're part of something way bigger, and we're just starting to suspicion that. So thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Alan. And Alan, you'll be seeing a lot of Alan. We've got some really beautiful shows planned. We're going to be doing Whitley Strieber will be on Wednesday night, February 5th. Then we'll be at the Conscious Life Expo that weekend after that. And then we're going to do another Making Contact show on Saturday night, February 15th. And then Zazar.
Zazar, yes, Zazar.
We're going to do something. We've got a lot going on, because this is really happening right now. And my dog was like, come on, Scott, this is a long show. It's time for a walk. So I put her on my lap instead to give her a little bit of love. I want to make a couple of announcements, and let me go there first. So tomorrow night is going to be a very special evening. Deborah Giusti, co-founder of the Global Peace Tribe, along with myself, has put together an experience. This is free of charge, Many of you remember Celestine Starr. She was on my shows many times. Longtime friend, passed away 2.5 years ago, but she has been a busy little angel. She has been connecting. Again, the veils are lifting, interdimensional contact is happening. And so we're going to have two different women who've been channeling Celestine, and we're going to have Celestine on tomorrow night. This is at 5:30 Pacific time. If you go to planetaryascension.org, planetaryascension.org, and register, and you can get the link. And it's going to be a very special evening where we all hear what Celestine has to say from the other side. So that's going to be a very special event.
Is there a recording on that too? Sorry to you.
Yes, if the people register, there will be a recording available. Just make sure you register so they have your email address, and then they will email you out the recording. Also, for those of you who are Global Peace Tribe subscribers, which is most everybody in the Zoom room right now, I'll be sending out the recording next week. And we send out the recordings to all of our shows. So for those of you watching on Facebook and YouTube, that's another reason to become a subscriber, because we send out the recordings to all of our shows. I also want to let everybody know about this Saturday night's show. It's going to be amazing. You know, the shows this year are just coming together like tonight, really powerfully. And on Saturday night, we're going to have several different people, all of whom lead their own consciousness organization. Each one of the people you're looking at is an executive director or a founder of some community-based global consciousness organization. Probably the most famous one that you all know is HeartMath. Well, Roland McCready, who's the executive director of HeartMath, will be with us. Teresa Collins from Global Coherence Pulse. Grace Lind from the Global Love Academy. And so it goes. Each one of these people is really, really a gem. And we're going to be talking about how we can all choose love this year. Tips, tools, practical ways. We're also going to be talking about how to create community, and you'll be learning about their communities. And we have a very special musical guest, Minoz. He's been on the show before, and he plays with David Pramol and Miten. When they do their worldwide tours, he is the third person who plays with them. He's a beautiful flautist and a beautiful being. So please do join us. Okay, I now am going to shift gears into some very sad news that has happened during the course of this show. During the course of this show, I've learned that two different friends of mine lost their homes in the Pacific Palisades fire. Sandra DeCastro Buffington, again, she's been on the show. She's a member of the Evolutionary Leaders Circle. She and I were texting earlier today because I knew that she had been evacuated. And this is what she just posted, that her home is burned down to the ground, nothing left. And then another friend, and let me see if I can pull that up, sent a photograph of what had been her home. I'll just bring this up. And this friend is asked to be left nameless, but this was her home, her dance studio, her temple. As we kind of look at that for a moment, I mean, imagine if that had been your home and nothing left, nothing. The reports are still coming in, but it appears that the Pacific Palisades fire has been devastating, and we're going to be learning that many of our friends have lost their homes. Also, during the course of this show, several more new fires have broken out in the Los Angeles area. There's now a big fire in the Hollywood Hills. Previously, there was the Pasadena Altadena fire. LA is on fire right now. I experienced this when I was living in Hidden Valley Lake, the Valley Fire. When the winds are that significant, and right now there are 50-mile-an-hour winds happening in LA, it picks up debris and it can travel for miles and start spot fires in other places. Why Los Angeles? Well, normally by this time in January, Los Angeles has received 8 inches of rain. Last year, there had been 12 inches of rain by now. So far, Los Angeles has received, up to this date, 0.14 inch of rain. So even though it's mid-January when rain should be coming and flourishing, it's still absolute peak wildfire season. And everything is just so dead and so brush. And when you get Santa Ana winds, and they're saying that these are the worst winds in Los Angeles in 10 years. So it's really serious what's going on. So although we did it at the beginning of the show, I'd like to ask once again, we're going to I'll go to gallery view in just a minute or two of silence. And let's all pray in our own way, sending maximum grace to Southern California, to the people, also all the animals. You know, when there's huge wildfires like this, animals lose their homes. So the animals that are scared, that are terrified, that are, some of whom are lost in the fires, as well as, of course, the homes and the buildings. So let's all drop in and send a maximum grace to our family in Southern California. Maximum grace for all beings who might be suffering, all beings who might be afraid. Maximum grace, and may we all be grateful for our home, our food, our possessions, our things. And may we all tune in to how we can be of divine service to support those who are going through these challenges. Aho, Ashe. Amen. And thank you, beautiful Global Peace Tribe, this beautiful community that keeps growing. And to conclude our evening, I'm going to go to our beloved Mystiques, 1111, also known as Fanny and Vigor.
your heart beholds. The treasure of your heart is gold, gold at the end of the rainbow. Feeling so shaky, shake. My heart is feeling your love. Thank you. And as we send our love to our friends.
I'm going to read a couple things and also remind people where they can find you. But Tia Therese put it well. She said, Mystiques, I feel this peace and claim it is my favorite with so much purple love from your purple pal, Tia Therese. Carol Craig writes, Fanny and Vigari, you guys sound absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is true. I just love having you in the show, and closing the show with you is always just a beautiful way to conclude in a powerful evening. And you can contact them by going to starchild.ca for Canada. Starchild.ca. That's where their phone number is. You can learn all about the various things. And again, get their album, Awaken 1111. You can get it on Bandcamp. Thank you, beloveds, so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you. Such a wonderful evening.
All right. Well, so much wisdom tonight. Thank you, Omashar, all of our presenters, my co-hosts, Alan and Dr. Tara, and most of all, our Global Peace Tribe, both those of you in the Zoom room and those of you watching out there in the void. Let's all raise our consciousness in whatever ways. You know, now is the time to cultivate a spiritual practice. Now, that can include a religion, or it can be yoga, martial arts, sports, musical instruments. It's a lot of forms of spiritual practice. But whatever it takes for us to raise our vibration and be open. I love what I think it was Daniel said, you know, not being believers, being curious. And now is the time to be very, very curious. And finally, remember that we can make any moment holy, sacred, by choosing to see the divine, seeing the divine in all, including ourselves and each other. So thank you, everybody, for a beautiful evening. I hope to see you all on Saturday night. God's blessings and take care.